The Galactic Coalition had stood for 12,000 years. It was a union of 847 different species from across the known universe. They had built great cities on 1,000,000 worlds. They had created wonders that would make ancient gods weep with jealousy. They had ended wars, cured diseases, and mapped the stars themselves. And now, they were running away. Ambassador Kethvora stood at the massive window of the Coalition Senate building on the capital world of Nexus Prime. His tall, slender body was covered in scales that shifted color with his emotions. Right now, they were a deep, fearful purple. Behind him, the great chamber was filled with chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted over each other. Some were crying, others were already leaving, rushing to their ships. "How long do we have?" asked a trembling voice beside him. Kethvora turned to see Ambassador Iril, a small furry creature from the Mikari system. Her large eyes were wet with tears. "The frontier worlds fell in 3 days," Kethvora replied. His voice was hollow. 17 billion dead, 3 entire species wiped out, gone, as if they never existed. And the enemy? What do we know about them? Kethvora looked back at the window. In the distance, he could see ships already lifting off. The evacuation had begun before the Senate had even voted. "We call them the Silence," he said. "They came from somewhere beyond our galaxy, from the empty void between the stars. They are machines, I think, or perhaps living things that became machines. No one knows for certain because everyone who gets close enough to study them dies. What do they want? Memories." The word hung in the air like poison. They consume memories. When they kill a person, they take everything that person ever knew, ever felt, ever loved. And when they finish with a world, that world is erased from history. The frontier species. I knew their names yesterday. Now I cannot remember them. Their art, their music, their languages, all gone, as if they were never born. Iril made a small sound of horror. "That is not possible. I watched the recordings before they too were erased. I saw cities vanish. I saw people screaming as their own children. Forgot them. The Silence does not just kill bodies. It kills souls." The great doors of the Senate chamber burst open. High Chancellor Morvath entered, his massive form supported by 6 mechanical legs. He was ancient, the oldest living member of the Coalition, and he had seen 3 wars in his long life, but Kethvora had never seen him look so afraid. "The vote is complete," Morvath announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, silencing the chaos. "Protocol Omega is now in effect. All Coalition species are ordered to evacuate to the Andromeda Corridor. The combined fleet will provide cover for civilian transports. This is not a drill. This is not a temporary measure. We are leaving, and we are not coming back." The chamber erupted in fresh chaos. Species that had been enemies for centuries now embraced each other in shared terror. Others fought to reach the exits first. Kethvora watched it all with numb acceptance. This was the end of everything they had built, the end of civilization itself. Ambassador Kethvora. He turned at the sound of his name. A human woman was walking toward him through the crowd. She was small by Coalition standards, barely reaching his chest. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her uniform was simple and practical. She moved like a soldier, each step precise and purposeful. "Admiral Helena Vance," she introduced herself. "United Nations Space Command." Kethvora tried to remember what he knew about humans. They were young, very young by galactic standards. Their species had only discovered space travel about 300 years ago. They had joined the Coalition just 50 years past. Most species considered them little more than clever children, still learning to walk among the stars. "Admiral," he greeted her politely. "You should be evacuating with the others. The human transport ships are gathering in Sector 7. We are not evacuating." Kethvora blinked. "I am sorry. I do not think I understood you correctly." "You understood me perfectly. Humanity is not running. We are staying to fight." For a long moment, Kethvora could not speak. He looked at the small human woman as if she had just announced that she planned to extinguish a star by spitting on it. "Admiral Vance," he said slowly, choosing his words with great care. "I do not think you understand what you are saying. The Silence has destroyed civilizations that were building starships when your ancestors were still living in caves. They have consumed species that were ancient when the first single-celled life appeared on your world. You have 47 military vessels. The Silence has tens of thousands. This is not a battle you can win. This is not a battle anyone can win. I know. Then why would you stay? Why would you throw away your entire species for nothing? Admiral Vance smiled. It was a strange expression, one that Kethvora's translator could not fully interpret. There was sadness in it, yes, but also something else. Something hard and bright and utterly unbreakable. Because someone has to, she said. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Kethvora followed her, his long legs easily keeping pace with her shorter stride. Admiral, please, think about what you are doing. Your species is young. You have so much potential. If you flee now, you can rebuild. You can grow. In a few thousand years, you might be strong enough to face the Silence. But if you stay and fight, you will die. All of you. Every human that has ever existed will be erased from the universe. Your art, your music, your stories, gone forever. Is that really what you want? Vance stopped walking. She turned to face him, and Kethvora saw something in her eyes that he did not understand. It was not fear. It was not madness. It was something he had never seen in any species before. Let me tell you something about humans, she said. About 100,000 years ago, my ancestors were living in caves in a place called Africa. They had no technology, no weapons except rocks and sticks. And they were dying. A massive volcano erupted, and the climate changed. Food became scarce. Our population dropped to maybe 10,000 individuals. 10,000 humans in the entire world. We should have gone extinct, but you did not. No, we did not. And do you know why? Because those 10,000 people refused to give up. They looked at a dying world, and instead of accepting death, they got angry. They spread across the planet. They crossed frozen wastelands and burning deserts. They built boats and crossed oceans. They faced predators bigger and stronger than themselves and killed them with pointy sticks. They were cold, hungry, and outnumbered, and they won anyway. Kethvora shook his head. That was different. You were fighting nature, not an enemy that can think and adapt. Was it different? We have been fighting extinction since the day we climbed down from the trees. Ice ages, plagues, famines, wars. We have killed each other by the billions. We have burned our own cities and poisoned our own air. We have come within minutes of destroying ourselves with nuclear weapons. And every single time, we survived. Not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we are too stubborn to die. She started walking again, and again Kethvora followed. The Silence expects us to run, Vance continued. Every species they have ever encountered has run. That is the logical thing to do. The smart thing. But humans are not always logical, Ambassador. Sometimes we are just mean. And right now, I am very, very mean. They reached the exit. Outside, the sky was filled with ships. Thousands of vessels of every size and shape were rising toward the stars, carrying billions of refugees toward safety. It was the greatest exodus in galactic history, and one small group of ships was moving in the opposite direction. Those are our warships, Vance said, pointing at the fleet of human vessels. 47 capital ships, 112 support craft, maybe 1 million soldiers in total, against an enemy that has conquered galaxies. It is suicide. Maybe, probably. But here is the thing about humans, Ambassador. We are not afraid of suicide missions. Our history is full of them. 300 Spartans holding a mountain pass against 1 million soldiers. A few hundred defenders holding a fort in Texas against thousands. Young men climbing out of trenches to charge machine guns. We know how to die fighting. It is one of the things we are best at. Kethvora felt something strange stirring in his chest. He did not recognize it at first. It had been so long since any species had made him feel this way. It was hope. Tiny and fragile, but real. You truly believe you can win? Vance laughed. It was a bitter sound. No, I do not think we can win. But I think we can hurt them. I think we can make them bleed. And I think that if we are going to die anyway, we might as well die screaming curses and throwing punches. And your people? Your civilians? Your children? They feel the same way. Vance's voice softened slightly. I spoke to the president before I came here. She is going to address the entire planet in a few hours. She is going to tell them the truth. All of it. The enemy, the odds, the almost certain death that is coming. And then she is going to ask them to fight anyway. And you think they will? I know they will. Because that is who we are. We are the species that runs toward danger instead of away from it. We are the species that builds hospitals in war zones and rescues strangers from burning buildings. We are the species that looks at the impossible and says, "Hold my beer." Kethvora did not understand the last reference, but he understood the meaning behind it. "You are insane," he said quietly. "Probably," Vance agreed. "But we are also humanity. And humanity does not go quietly." She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was warm and surprisingly strong. "Go, Ambassador. Take your people and run. Find a safe place in another galaxy. Build new cities and write new songs. And remember us. That is all I ask. When the history books are written, remember that there was a species called humanity. Remember that when the darkness came, we stood against it. Remember that we did not run." She released his hand and walked toward her waiting shuttle. Kethvora watched her go, his scales shifting through colors he could not control. "Admiral," he called out. She stopped and looked back. "Why?" he asked. "I still do not understand. Why throw away everything for a fight you cannot win?" Vance smiled that strange smile again. "Because my grandmother survived a concentration camp. My grandfather lost his legs in a war and still raised 4 children. My mother was a refugee who walked 1,000 miles with nothing but the clothes on her back. I come from a long line of stubborn, angry people who refused to die when they were supposed to. If I ran now, I would be spitting on their graves. But you will die. Everyone dies, Ambassador. The only question is whether you die standing up or lying down." She paused. "Besides, there is one thing the silence has never faced before." "What is that?" "A species with nothing to lose and everything to prove." Her eyes gleamed with something fierce. "We have been fighting for our survival since before we could write. We have trained for extinction our entire history. The silence thinks it is coming to conquer another easy prey. It is wrong. It is walking into the largest trap in the history of the universe." "A trap?" "The trap is us. We are the species that invented war. Not the clean, civilized war that the Coalition practices. The ugly, brutal, no rules kind of war. The kind where you burn your own cities rather than let the enemy have them. The kind where grandmothers pick up rifles and children throw grenades. The kind where there is no surrender, no negotiation, no mercy." She climbed into her shuttle. Before the door closed, she looked back one last time. "Tell the Coalition something for me. Tell them that we are going to buy them time. Months, maybe years, if we are lucky. Use that time wisely. Build defenses. Develop new weapons. And maybe, just maybe, think about coming back to help." The door closed. The shuttle lifted off. Kethvora watched it fly toward the gathering human fleet, and he felt something break inside him. He had been running his entire life. His species had been running for thousands of years. They had always believed that survival was the highest goal, that living to fight another day was better than dying today. But watching that small human shuttle fly toward certain death, he suddenly was not sure anymore. He turned and walked back into the Senate building. The chamber was almost empty now. Only a few stragglers remained, packing the last of their belongings. "Ambassador!" One of his aides rushed toward him. "The evacuation shuttle is waiting. We need to go now." Kethvora did not answer. He walked to his desk and began pulling up files. Historical records, military data, everything the Coalition had ever collected about the silence. "Ambassador, what are you doing?" "There is no time. I am copying these files," Kethvora said calmly. "Everything we know about the enemy. I am going to send them to the human fleet." "Why?" "They are already dead. They just do not know it yet." Kethvora thought about Admiral Vance, about her grandmother who survived the concentration camp, about her grandfather who lost his legs and kept fighting, about all those millions of humans flying toward death with their eyes open and their hearts on fire. "Maybe they are dead," he said, "but they deserve every advantage we can give them. They are doing something none of us had the courage to do. They are standing up." He finished the transfer and finally turned to follow his aide. "And besides," he added quietly, "I have a feeling that the silence is about to learn what it really means to fight a war." Far above them, the human fleet formed into battle formation, 47 ships against the end of the world. It was insane. It was hopeless. It was magnificent. And in her command chair aboard the flagship Defiance, Admiral Helena Vance looked at the stars and smiled. All ships, this is Admiral Vance. The coalition is running, the enemy is coming, and we are all that stands between them and everything we love. She paused. I will not lie to you. Most of us are going to die. Maybe all of us. But I promise you this. They will remember us. Long after the last star burns out, they will tell stories about what humanity did today. They will whisper our names in the dark and wonder how we found the courage. She stood up and raised her voice. So let us show them what we are made of. Let us show them what happens when you back humans into a corner. Let us show them why our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and wars, not because we were the strongest, not because we were the smartest, but because we were too stubborn to die. A roar went up across the fleet. Soldiers and sailors, scientists and engineers, all of them screaming their defiance at the uncaring stars, and somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the silence heard something it had never heard before. It heard the sound of prey that refused to run. It did not understand what it was hearing, but it would learn. Oh yes, it would learn. 3 days after the coalition fled, the last of their great ships vanished into the distance. Their engines left trails of light across the sky like tears falling into the void. Billions of beings from hundreds of species ran toward safety, and they did not look back. Earth had never felt so alone. General Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the UNS Defiance and watched the final coalition vessel disappear. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had fought in 4 wars during his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. They are gone, said Captain Yuki Tanaka, stepping up beside him. She was young, barely 30, but she had the hard eyes of a veteran. Every single one of them. Can you blame them? Chen replied. The silence has destroyed civilizations older than our entire species. Running was the smart choice. Then why did we not run? Chen turned to look at her. Because running was never really an option for us. Where would we go? We have 47 warships and maybe 1,000 civilian transports. The Andromeda Corridor is 2 million light-years away. We would die of old age before we got halfway there. So, we are fighting because we cannot run? No. Chen shook his head. We are fighting because we are humans. We are fighting because that is what we do. Our history is written in blood, Captain. Every great moment of our civilization was purchased with sacrifice. The soldiers who held the line at Marathon. The defenders of Stalingrad who fought house to house in the frozen ruins. The passengers of Flight 93 who charged the cockpit knowing they would die. We have always been willing to trade our lives for something greater. He turned back to the window. Besides, I have grandchildren. 2 little girls, 5 and 7 years old. They live on a farm in Kansas with their parents. If I run now, the silence will eventually find them. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000, but it will find them. And if we fight, we buy them time. Time to grow up. Time to have children of their own. Time to develop new technologies, build new defenses, find new allies. He paused. Or maybe we win. Unlikely, I know, but not impossible. Tanaka was silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. I have a sister on Mars, she said. She is pregnant. Her husband is a teacher. They are scared, but they are not running either. She told me that if the world is going to end, she wants her child to be born free, even if it is only free for a day. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. That is why we fight, Captain. Not for victory, for that one extra day. The door behind them opened, and a young officer rushed in. His face was pale and excited. General, Admiral Vance is calling an emergency meeting. All senior staff. She says it is time to discuss the Prometheus protocol. Chen and Tanaka exchanged glances. Prometheus. The word hung in the air like a curse. Tell her we are on our way, Chen said. The meeting room was deep in the heart of the Defiance, protected by meters of armored plating. When Chen and Tanaka arrived, they found Admiral Vance already there, along with a dozen other senior officers. The room was tense and quiet. Thank you all for coming, Vance said. She looked tired. None of them had slept much in the past 3 days. I will get straight to the point. The coalition is gone. The enemy is coming. We have maybe 6 weeks before they reach the outer colonies. That gives us 6 weeks to prepare the biggest surprise in military history. She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a schematic of something massive and terrible. Something that made several officers gasp. "This is the Prometheus Protocol," Vance continued. "Most of you have never heard of it. That was intentional. It was developed in secret over the past 50 years, by a joint effort of every major nation on Earth. It was meant to be our last resort if we ever faced extinction." "What is it?" asked Colonel Rodriguez, a heavy-set man with a thick beard. "Everything," Vance replied. "Every terrible weapon we ever dreamed of but were too civilized to build. Antimatter bombs capable of destroying entire planets. Gravity weapons that can tear ships apart at the molecular level. Biological agents that can dissolve organic matter in seconds. Nanobots designed to eat through any material known to science." "My God," someone whispered. "God has nothing to do with this," Vance said flatly. "This is pure human ingenuity applied to the art of killing. We designed these weapons for ourselves, you know. In case we ever went to war with each other again, we were afraid that the old nuclear arsenals would not be enough next time. So we built something worse. And we are going to use them against the silence? We are going to use everything against the silence. Every weapon, every trick, every dirty tactic we have ever developed." Vance leaned forward. "The Coalition fights clean wars. They have rules and conventions and limits. We do not. We are going to fight the ugliest, dirtiest, most vicious war in the history of the galaxy. And we are going to make the silence regret the day it decided to come for us." General Chen studied the schematics. "How much of this is operational?" "About 60%. The other 40% is still in development. But we are rushing it. Every scientist on Earth is working around the clock." Vance pulled up another display. "We also have the Coalition's old defense platforms. They left them behind when they ran. Thousands of automated weapon systems, just sitting there waiting to be reprogrammed. They left their defenses. They did not think they would need them. They planned to run so far that the silence would never find them." Vance smiled grimly. "Their loss is our gain. Colonel Washington, I want you to take a team and start reprogramming those platforms. Turn them into the deadliest killing machines in the galaxy." "Yes, Admiral." "Captain Tanaka, you are now in charge of our intelligence division. I want to know everything about the silence. How they move, how they communicate, what they are afraid of. Find me weaknesses." "Understood." "General Chen, you have overall command of ground forces. The enemy will eventually land on our worlds. When they do, I want them to find nothing but death waiting for them." Chen nodded. "I have already started planning. Booby traps, ambushes, guerrilla tactics. We are going to make every city a fortress and every street a killing ground." "Good." Vance looked around the room. "Everyone else, I want maximum creativity. I want ideas that would make our ancestors proud and our enemies terrified. Nothing is off the table. Nothing is too extreme. If it might hurt the silence, I want to hear about it." The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Plans were made. Resources were allocated. By the end, every officer in the room had a mission and a purpose. As they filed out, Chen hung back. He caught Vance's arm. "Helena," he said quietly. They had known each other for 20 years. "Are you sure about this? The Prometheus weapons. Once we use them, there is no going back. We will be proving that humanity is exactly as dangerous as the Coalition always feared." Vance looked at him with eyes that held no doubt. "I hope we prove we are more dangerous than they ever imagined," she said. "That is the whole point, Marcus. We need to be so terrible, so relentless, so absolutely merciless, that the silence decides we are not worth the trouble. Or at least that we are expensive enough to give it pause. And if we become monsters in the process, then we become monsters. Better a living monster than a dead saint." She paused. "Besides, we have always been monsters. We just pretended otherwise. The silence is about to meet the real humanity. The one that built empires on skulls and wrote poetry about the beauty of war. The one that invented nuclear weapons and then gave them cute nicknames. We are not the peaceful explorers the Coalition thought we were. We are predators wearing the skin of prey." Chen had no response to that, because deep down, he knew she was right. On Earth, President Amara Okonquo stood in front of cameras and prepared to tell the world the truth. She was 60 years old, with skin like dark chocolate and hair that had gone completely white in the past week. She had been a doctor before she went into politics, and she still remembered the hardest part of medicine, telling patients that they were going to die. Now she had to tell an entire planet. My fellow humans, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. I am speaking to you tonight because you deserve the truth. Not comfortable lies, not false hope. The truth. She took a breath. An enemy is coming. They are called the Silence, and they have destroyed civilizations older than recorded history. The Galactic Coalition, our allies and partners for the past 50 years, has fled. They believe that fighting is hopeless. They may be right. Across the planet, billions of people watched. Families huddled together in living rooms. Workers gathered around screens in factories. Children looked up from their phones and tablets. I will not tell you that we can win, Okonquo continued. I do not know if we can. Our military leaders believe we can hurt the enemy, slow them down, maybe even make them reconsider their invasion. But victory, true victory, that would require a miracle. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with an intensity that made people lean closer to their screens. But I will tell you this, we are not running. Not because we are too proud or too stupid to run, but because there is nowhere to run to. Our ships cannot outrun the enemy. Our population cannot hide. If we flee, we die tired. If we stand and fight, we die on our feet. And so we will fight. Every man and woman who can hold a weapon will fight. Every factory will build weapons. Every hospital will prepare for casualties. Every school will teach our children what to do when the enemy comes. She stood up straight, and her voice rose. They think we are weak because we are young. They are wrong. We are strong because we are young. We still remember what it means to fight for survival. We still have the hunger and the fury that older species have forgotten. We are the species that conquered our own world a dozen times over. We are the species that split the atom and walked on the moon. We are the species that refused to die when every odd was against us. So I say to the Silence, come. Come and see what happens when you threaten our children. Come and see what happens when you back us into a corner. Come and learn why every predator that ever hunted us is now extinct. We are humanity. We are not afraid of you. And we will never, ever surrender. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the world was silent. Then the silence broke. In cities across the planet, people began to cheer. Not the desperate cheering of denial, but the fierce cheering of defiance. Strangers hugged each other in the streets. Old enemies shook hands. The divisions that had plagued humanity for centuries suddenly seemed small and meaningless. In Moscow, a factory that had been making cars began making tanks. In Tokyo, a robotics company started building combat drones. In New York, a retired Marine walked into a recruitment center and said she wanted to fight again. In Lagos, a grandmother took her grandfather's rifle down from the wall and began teaching her grandchildren how to shoot. In a small town in India, a Hindu temple and a Muslim mosque organized a joint blood drive for the coming wounded. In Brazil, drug cartels and police officers declared a truce and began planning joint defense of their cities. The world was not united because a speech told them to be. The world was united because unity was the only option left. And in that unity, something powerful was born. Admiral Vance watched the response from the Defiance and felt something she had not expected. Hope. They are ready, she said softly. General Chen nodded. They have always been ready. We just needed something worth fighting for. The Silence has no idea what it is walking into. No, it does not. Chen smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It thinks it is coming to harvest another easy meal. Instead, it is about to choke on its food. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Ships were refitted, weapons were manufactured, training programs were accelerated. On Mars, colonists began digging tunnels and bunkers. If the enemy wanted their world, they would have to dig them out room by room. On Europa, the ice mining stations were converted into underwater fortresses. The enemy would find only frozen death on the surface. On Titan, the atmospheric processing plants were rigged with explosives. If the colony fell, the enemy would get nothing but poison. And on Earth, the cradle of humanity, every city became a fortress. Every highway became a potential killing ground. Every home became a bunker. Dr. Sarah Kim worked 18 hours a day in her laboratory, studying the fragments of silence technology that had been recovered from the frontier worlds. She was a xenobiologist, 45 years old, with the tired eyes of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. They are beautiful, she said one night, looking at a piece of silenced biomatter under her microscope. In a terrible way. They are like nothing we have ever seen, half machine, half living tissue. They do not reproduce like normal life. They grow from consumed matter, incorporating the genetic material of their victims. Is there a weakness? Asked her assistant, a young man named James. Maybe. Their consciousness is distributed. It is not in one brain but spread across their entire network. If we could disrupt that network. She shook her head, but I do not know how. Not yet. Keep working, James said. You will figure it out. How can you be so sure? Because you are human. And humans always figure it out. Dr. Kim laughed tiredly. I hope you are right. I am. Now get some sleep. You cannot save the world if you die of exhaustion. She did not sleep, of course. None of them did. There was too much work and too little time. But as the days passed and the preparations continued, something strange happened. The fear began to fade. Not because the danger had lessened, but because purpose had replaced paralysis. People who had felt helpless now had tasks. People who had felt alone now had community. People who had felt like victims now felt like warriors. And in the darkness between stars, the silence continued its approach. It had no fear, for it had never known defeat. It had no doubt, for it had never been surprised. It would learn. In 6 weeks, it would reach the outer colonies. In 6 weeks, it would discover what happened when it tried to consume a species that would rather burn than surrender. In 6 weeks, the war would begin, and humanity would show the galaxy what it really meant to fight for survival. The silence arrived at New Helsinki on a Tuesday morning. The colony world was home to 2.3 million humans. It was a cold planet, covered in forests and snow, named after the frozen city on Earth where many of its first settlers had come from. It was supposed to be a peaceful place, a place for scientists and farmers, a place where families raised children and old people retired to watch the northern lights. Now it was a battlefield. Captain Erik Virtanen stood on the walls of the capital city and watched the enemy descend from the sky. The silence ships were massive and terrible, like mountains of black metal and twisted flesh. They blocked out the sun as they lowered toward the surface, casting shadows that seemed to swallow hope itself. How many? Asked Lieutenant Chen beside him. She was young, only 24, with eyes that had aged 20 years in the past hour. Thousands, Virtanen replied. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. He had made his peace with death 3 days ago. Maybe tens of thousands. It does not matter. We are not here to count them. Then why are we here? Virtanen smiled. It was the smile of a man with a secret, to give them a proper welcome. The first silence constructs touched down outside the city. They were nightmarish things, towering creatures of biomechanical horror. Some walked on dozens of legs, others slithered like vast serpents, still others floated on fields of dark energy, their tendrils reaching toward the city like hungry fingers. They had consumed 17 billion beings in the frontier worlds. They expected this to be the same. A simple harvest. A quick feast. They advanced toward the city walls, and the city exploded. The geothermal reactors beneath New Helsinki's capital had been converted into the largest bomb in human history. 5 megatons of nuclear fire erupted from the ground, turning the city into a pillar of light and fury. The blast wave swept outward at 1,000 kilometers per hour, vaporizing everything in its path. 40,000 humans died in that instant. 40,000 people who had volunteered to stay behind, to be the bait in the trap. Fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, old and young. They had known what would happen. They had stayed anyway, and they took 87 silence vessels with them. It was the first loss the enemy had suffered in 11,000 years. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Mining towns detonated their own ore processing facilities. Fishing villages sank their ships in the harbors and collapsed the docks. Research stations destroyed their data and then destroyed themselves. The silence had come expecting to harvest a helpless world. Instead, they found a trap. On the UNS Defiance, Admiral Vance watched the battle reports come in. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. Casualties? She asked. Approximately 200,000 dead on New Helsinki, reported Captain Tanaka. Her voice was tight with grief. But the enemy has lost over 100 ships, and they have gained nothing. Every city is destroyed. Every data bank is wiped. Every person is either dead or evacuated. The silence has never faced scorched earth tactics before, General Chen added. They are designed to consume and absorb. But there is nothing left to absorb. We have denied them everything. Vance nodded slowly. It will not stop them, but it will slow them down. It will make them uncertain, and it will make them angry. Angry? Yes. The silence is used to easy prey. Prey that runs, prey that surrenders. We are not running. We are not surrendering. We are spitting in their face and daring them to do something about it. She smiled grimly. Nothing makes a predator more dangerous than confusion. But nothing makes it more vulnerable either. The war continued. On a dozen worlds, humanity fought with tactics that horrified even themselves. Cities were mined before the enemy arrived. Factories were rigged to explode the moment they were captured. Crops were poisoned, water supplies were contaminated, and livestock was slaughtered rather than left for the enemy. Captain Dmitry Volkov led his strike team through the corridors of a silence harvester ship. They had infiltrated through a breach created by a suicide bomber. A young woman named Sarah who had strapped herself with antimatter charges and walked directly into the ship's loading bay. How much further? Asked Sergeant Wong, covering the rear. Volkov checked his scanner. 200 meters. The power core should be just ahead. And our extraction? There is no extraction. Volkov's voice was matter of fact. We always knew this was a one-way trip. The team was silent for a moment. Then Corporal Rodriguez spoke up. I have a daughter, he said. She is 3 years old. Lives with her grandmother on Luna. I want you all to know that I am glad to be here. Glad to die for something that matters. We are all glad, said Volkov. That is why we volunteered. Now stay focused. We have a job to do. They fought their way through nightmarish corridors, past creatures that defied description. Volkov lost half his team in the first 100 meters. He lost the other half in the next 50. By the time he reached the power core, he was alone. His left arm was gone, severed by an energy blade. His armor was cracked and leaking. Blood was dripping down his face from a wound on his scalp. But his finger was still on the detonator. He looked around the core chamber. It was vast and terrible, pulsing with alien energy. This was the heart of the harvester, the engine that powered its horrible work. Volkov thought about his wife, who had died 10 years ago. He thought about his son, who was fighting on Mars right now. He thought about the little house in Siberia where he had grown up, with the wood stove that never worked properly and the dog that barked at squirrels. He smiled. Tell my daughter I went down swinging, he said into his communicator, knowing the message would be recorded and sent if any of them survived. Then he pressed the button. The harvester died in light. Across the galaxy, the fleeing coalition received reports they could not understand. Ambassador Kethvora sat in his quarters on the refugee ship and watched the footage over and over again. A human marine, her leg blown off by enemy fire, dragging herself forward on her belly to detonate an explosive. A pilot, his ship crippled and burning, steering it directly into an enemy carrier. Civilians with mining equipment and industrial tools, holding apartment buildings like ancient fortresses. They are insane, whispered his aide. They are absolutely insane. No, Kethvora replied quietly. They are not insane. We just never understood them. He pulled up the human history files that Admiral Vance had left behind. He had been reading them constantly since the evacuation, trying to understand the species that had chosen to stay and die. Look at this, he said, pointing to a section. 300 years before they discovered space travel, they had a war. A global war. Millions dead. And in the middle of it, in a frozen city called Stalingrad, a group of soldiers held a single building for 58 days. 58 days of constant fighting, with no food, no water, no hope of rescue. When they were finally relieved, only 5 of them were still alive. Why did they not surrender? Because surrendering was not an option. The enemy had made clear that captured soldiers would be killed. So they fought. Not for victory, but for spite. They fought because dying on their feet was better than dying on their knees. The aide shook her head. Our species would never do that. No species in the coalition would do that. That is why we ran, Kethvora said. And that is why they stayed. He closed the file and stared at the blank screen. We thought we were teaching them when they joined the coalition. We thought we were civilizing them, showing them how to be proper galactic citizens. But we had it backwards. They were the ones with something to teach us. We just never wanted to learn. Back in human space, the war ground on. Month after month, world after world, the humans traded their lives for time. They did not try to hold territory. They did not try to build defensive lines. They simply made the enemy pay for every inch in blood and fire. Private Maria Santos was 17 years old when the silence came to her hometown of Sao Paulo. She had been a student, planning to study medicine at university. Instead, she found herself holding a rifle in the ruins of what used to be a shopping center. "They are coming," said the old man beside her. His name was João, and he had been a professor of literature before the war. Now he was a sniper with 47 confirmed kills. "I know," Maria replied. "I can hear them." The sound of the silence was unlike anything else. It was not just noise, it was absence. It was the sound of memories being erased, of souls being consumed. People who heard it too long went mad. Others simply stopped, their minds shutting down rather than facing the horror. Maria had learned to ignore it. She had learned to ignore a lot of things. "How many charges do we have left?" she asked. 3. Enough to take out their advance group, maybe buy us another hour. "Good. I want to see the sunrise." João looked at her with sad eyes. "The sun will not rise for another 4 hours. I know, but I want to try." They fought through the night. João died at 3 a.m., taken by a tendril that came through the wall. Maria killed the creature that killed him, then fell back to the next position. She fought alone for another hour, moving from room to room, building to building, always staying one step ahead of the enemy. At 5:47 a.m., she was cornered, out of ammunition, out of options, surrounded by creatures that wanted her memories more than her life. She looked at the grenade in her hand. Her last grenade, the one she had been saving. The silence closed in. Maria thought about her mother, who had died in the first wave. She thought about her little brother, who was safe on a refugee ship somewhere. She thought about all the things she would never do, all the places she would never see. Then she pulled the pin. "Suck on this," she said, and smiled. The explosion was small compared to the nuclear fire that had consumed New Helsinki. But it was enough. Maria Santos died at 17 years old, having killed an estimated 37 enemy units in a single night of fighting. She never saw the sunrise, but she made sure the silence remembered her. Stories like Maria's were repeated 1,000,000 times across human space. Every world, every city, every street became a graveyard for the enemy. The silence had never fought a war of attrition before. They had never faced an enemy that considered death a victory if it hurt them enough. 6 months into the war, humanity had lost Earth's moon, 17 colony worlds, and 340 million lives. The numbers were staggering. The grief was unbearable. On Earth, funeral services ran 24 hours a day, and even then, they could not keep up. But the silence had lost something too. They had lost time. For 11,000 years, the silence had swept through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. They had never slowed down. They had never stopped. Now, for the first time, they were stuck, bogged down, bleeding. Their losses were tiny compared to humanity's. They had lost maybe 1,000 ships and a few million constructs. Against their total force, it was nothing. But it was not nothing to them, because they had never lost anything before. They had never felt pain. They had never known failure. And now they were feeling both. Admiral Vance looked at the casualty reports and did the math. They could not keep this up forever. Maybe another year at the current rate. Maybe 2 if they got lucky. But eventually, humanity would simply run out of people to fight, unless something changed. "We need a new strategy," she said at the War Council. "We are hurting them, but we are hurting ourselves more. We need to find a way to hit them where it really matters." "Their leadership?" General Chen suggested. "They do not have leadership. Not in any way we understand. They are a collective, a hive mind. Killing individuals does nothing. Their production facilities? We have never been able to locate them. They seem to produce new units from the matter they consume." Captain Tanaka spoke up. "What about their memory storage? That is what they want from us, right? Our memories. Where do they put them?" Vance paused. "We do not know. But that is actually a good question. If we could find where they store the memories they consume, we could destroy it," Tanaka finished. "Make all their harvesting meaningless. Or we could do something else." "Doctor." Sarah Kim had been listening quietly from the corner of the room. Now she stepped forward, her eyes bright with an idea that had been forming for weeks. "What do you mean?" Vance asked. Kim pulled up her research on the display. I have been studying the Silence for months. Their biology, their technology, their behavior. And I think I finally understand what they are. Tell us. They are lonely. Kim said the word simply, but they hit like a bomb. They are the loneliest beings in the universe. They have been alone for so long that they have forgotten what it means to have an identity. That is why they consume memories. They are trying to fill an emptiness inside themselves that they do not even understand. How does that help us? Kim smiled. What if we gave them what they wanted? Not through conquest, but as a gift. What if we gave them our memories, voluntarily? All of them. All at once. That would kill us. Not if we encode them into a delivery system. A weapon that carries the complete human experience and forces the Silence to absorb it. They want our memories? Let us give them more than they can handle. Vance stared at the scientist for a long moment. Then she started to laugh. You want to weaponize human history? I want to weaponize human nature. Everything we are. Everything we have ever been. The love and the hate, the cruelty and the kindness, the war and the peace. All of it, all at once, forced into a consciousness that has never experienced individual existence. It could work, Chen said slowly. Or it could make them stronger. Or it could destroy them completely, Kim replied. There is only one way to find out. Vance thought about the millions who had already died. She thought about the millions more who would die if they continued the current strategy. She thought about Maria Santos, who never saw her sunrise. Do it, she said. Build the weapon. We are going to teach the Silence what it really means to be human. And in laboratories across human space, scientists began the strangest project in history, turning the entire human experience into a bomb. Dr. Sarah Kim had not slept in 4 days. She sat in her laboratory on the research station Einstein, orbiting the dark side of Mercury. Around her, dozens of scientists worked in focused silence, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays. They were building something that had never been built before, something that might save humanity or doom it forever. Run the simulation again, Kim said to her assistant, James. That is the 14th time, he replied gently. The results are not going to change. Run it anyway. I need to be sure. James sighed and started the program. On the central display, a model of the Silence consciousness appeared. It was represented as a vast network of interconnected nodes, each one representing a mind that had been consumed over the millennia. Billions of minds, perhaps trillions, all merged into one terrible whole. Initiating payload insertion, James reported. The simulation showed a single point of light entering the network. This represented the weapon they were building, a concentrated package of human memories, experiences, and consciousness patterns. It was designed to force its way into the Silence collective and dump its contents directly into the hive mind. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the network began to shake. Cascade failure in Sector 7, James reported, his voice rising with excitement. Sector 12 is fragmenting. Sector 23 is. Oh my God. The simulation showed the Silence consciousness tearing itself apart. The human memories were spreading through the network like a virus. And wherever they touched, the collective was breaking down into individual pieces. The theory was correct, Kim breathed. They cannot handle individual experience. Their consciousness is based on unity, on sameness. When you force them to experience billions of unique human perspectives at once, they go insane, James finished. Not insane. They become individuals. For the first time in their existence, they will experience what it means to be alone inside their own heads. Kim stood up and stretched her aching back. That is either going to destroy them or transform them. Either way, they will not be able to keep fighting. The door to the laboratory opened, and Admiral Vance walked in. She looked worse than Kim did, with dark circles under her eyes and a slight tremor in her hands. The stress of command was killing her slowly. How is it coming? She asked. The theory is solid, Kim replied, but the practical application is proving difficult. Difficult how? Kim pulled up a new display. To deliver the payload, we need to get it inside the Silence primary consciousness node. That is a structure at the center of their largest harvester fleet, protected by thousands of ships and millions of constructs. Even if we fight our way through, the delivery device needs to physically connect with the node to transfer the memories. A suicide mission. Yes, but not just any suicide mission. The ship carrying the payload needs to survive long enough to complete the transfer. That takes approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes of sitting still while every silence in the system tries to destroy you. Vance nodded slowly. Can we shield it? We are working on that. Captain Tanaka has an idea about using gravitational distortion fields to deflect incoming fire. It might work, but even with shielding, the ship will be destroyed. The crew has no chance of survival. Then we will need volunteers. We already have them. Kim's voice was soft. Every pilot in the fleet has volunteered. They are fighting each other for the privilege. Vance closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet. Of course they have, she said. Of course they have. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Mercury's surface stretched below them, barren and cratered, and utterly lifeless. It was strange to think that humanity's last hope was being built in such a desolate place. There is one more problem, Kim said hesitantly. Tell me. The payload needs to contain the complete human experience. All of it. Every memory, every emotion, every perspective. We have been gathering data from volunteers across human space. People who have agreed to have their consciousness patterns recorded. But it is not enough. We need more. Much more. How much more? Ideally, everyone. Every human being alive should contribute their memories to the payload. The more complete the picture, the more effective the weapon will be. Vance turned back to face her. You want to record the consciousness of 18 billion people? I want to ask them to contribute. Voluntarily. Each person would give a sample of their memories, their personality, their unique experience of being human. It would not hurt them, but it would make them part of the weapon, part of the final attack. That is a lot to ask. I know, but I think they will say yes. Kim smiled slightly. They have surprised us before. 3 days later, President Okonquo addressed the world again. She stood in front of the cameras looking older than her years, her white hair almost glowing against her dark skin. Behind her, the blue marble of Earth rotated slowly, a fragile jewel against the black void. My fellow humans, she began. I come to you tonight with a request, not a demand, not an order, a request. She explained the plan in simple terms, the weapon, the payload, the need for everyone to contribute. She did not hide the risks or the uncertainties. She did not promise victory. I am asking you to give something precious, she said. A piece of yourself. Your memories, your feelings, your unique experience of being alive. It will not hurt. It will not change you, but it will become part of the weapon that might save us all. She paused. I am not going to tell you that this will definitely work. I am not going to promise that we will win. But I am going to tell you something true. If this fails, it will not be because we did not try. It will not be because we held back or played it safe. We will have given everything we had. Every single thing. She looked directly into the camera. The silence wants our memories. They want to consume us and erase us from history. But we are going to give them our memories first. And when they swallow us, they are going to choke, because we are not easy to digest. We are stubborn and angry and confused and beautiful and ugly and hopeful and afraid. We are humans. And humanity is not a meal. It is a poison. The broadcast ended, and then the world responded. Within hours, billions of people lined up at consciousness recording stations. They came from every country, every culture, every walk of life. Old people who remembered wars that their grandchildren had only read about. Young people who had barely begun to live. Criminals and saints, rich and poor, sick and healthy. Each one sat in a chair and placed a device on their head. Each one closed their eyes and let their memories flow into the machine. Each one gave a piece of themselves to the weapon. A 90-year-old grandmother in Japan contributed memories of her childhood, playing in rice paddies with her sisters. She also contributed memories of the fire that took her family, and the years of rebuilding that followed. A young man in Brazil contributed memories of falling in love for the first time, of dancing until dawn, of believing that the world was full of possibilities. A soldier in Russia contributed memories of battle, of killing and nearly being killed, of the nightmares that never fully went away. A child in Nigeria contributed memories of playing soccer with friends, of her mother's cooking, of the way the rain sounded on their tin roof. Billions of memories, billions of perspectives, billions of unique experiences of what it meant to be human. Dr. Kim watched the data stream in and wept. It is beautiful, she whispered. All of it. The joy and the pain, the love and the hate. It is all beautiful. James stood beside her, watching the same data. We are putting all of this into a weapon? Not a weapon. A mirror. We are going to show the silence what it is missing, what it lost when it stopped being individuals. We are going to give it everything it ever wanted, and let it drown in the gift. That seems cruel. Maybe. Or maybe it is the kindest thing we could do. Kim turned to face him. The silence has been alone for so long. Imagine what that feels like. To have no identity of your own. To have consumed so many minds that you have forgotten you ever had one. They are not evil, James. They are hungry. They are lost. They are desperate. So we are going to cure them? We are going to change them, one way or another. She looked back at the data streams. After they experience what we are giving them, they will never be the same. Either they will shatter completely, or they will become something new. Something that remembers what it is like to be alive. Over the next 2 weeks, the weapon took shape. The payload was compressed into a single device about the size of a basketball. It contained the distilled essence of 18 billion human beings. Their memories, their emotions, their unique patterns of thought and feeling. It was the most valuable object ever created. The delivery ship was called the Prometheus. It was a small science vessel, chosen because it was fast and maneuverable. Its shields had been reinforced with every technology humanity possessed. Its crew was carefully selected from thousands of volunteers. Captain Yuki Tanaka was chosen to command the mission. She had argued for days before Admiral Vance finally agreed. "You are too valuable," Vance had said. "Your intelligence work has saved millions of lives, and this mission will save billions more," Tanaka replied. "Someone has to carry that thing into the heart of the Silence Fleet. It might as well be someone who understands what it means. You will die. Everyone dies, Admiral. The only question is whether it means something." Tanaka smiled. "Besides, I do not have any family. No children, no spouse. If I die, I am not leaving anyone behind. Some of the other volunteers have kids, parents, people who need them. I do not. That is a terrible reason to die. It is a practical reason, and practical is what we need right now." Vance had finally agreed. Tanaka had selected her crew. 5 volunteers, all of them single, all of them ready to die. The night before the mission, Tanaka sat alone in her quarters and recorded a message. "Hi, Mom," she said to the camera. "I know you died when I was 12. I know you cannot hear this, but I wanted to talk to you anyway." She took a deep breath. "Tomorrow I am going to do something important, something that might save a lot of people. I might not come back from it. Actually, I definitely will not come back from it. That is okay. I made peace with that a long time ago." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "I used to be angry at you for dying, for leaving me alone. But I understand now. Sometimes people have to leave. Sometimes the leaving is the point. You left me with memories of love and kindness and strength. Tomorrow, I am going to leave the world with something too. I am going to give them hope." She wiped a tear from her eye. "I hope I make you proud. I hope that wherever you are, you can see what your daughter became. I am not the scared little girl you left behind. I am a warrior. And tomorrow, I am going to show the galaxy what human warriors can do." She ended the recording and sent it to the archives. It would be delivered to her family records after the mission, whether she succeeded or failed. Then she went to sleep. She dreamed of her mother's face, smiling down at her from a field of stars. The next morning, the fleet gathered above Earth. 47 capital ships, battered and scarred from months of fighting, formed a protective sphere around the Prometheus. Thousands of smaller vessels filled the gaps, ready to throw themselves at the enemy. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at her fleet. So few ships, so few people, against an enemy that numbered in the billions. But they had something the Silence did not have. They had each other. "All ships, this is Admiral Vance." Her voice echoed across the fleet. "In a few hours, we will enter the final battle. Many of us will not survive. Perhaps none of us will survive. But that is not what matters." She paused. "What matters is that we tried. What matters is that we fought. What matters is that when the darkness came for us, we did not go quietly. We screamed and kicked and punched and bit. We made them pay for every life they took. We made them work for every inch." Her voice rose. "The Silence has been destroying civilizations for 11,000 years. They have never lost. They have never even been challenged. Until now. Until us. We are the first species in history to make them bleed. And today, we are going to make them choke on their own blood. A roar went up across the fleet. Soldiers and sailors, engineers and scientists, all of them screaming their defiance at the uncaring stars. For Earth, Vance shouted. For Earth, the fleet replied. For humanity. For humanity. The engines ignited. The fleet began to move. And somewhere ahead, in the darkness between worlds, the silence waited. They had no idea what was coming for them. On the Prometheus, Captain Tanaka sat in her command chair and watched the stars blur past. The payload rested in a secure compartment behind her, pulsing faintly with the combined consciousness of 18 billion human beings. Nervous? Asked Lieutenant Park beside her. Terrified, Tanaka admitted, but not of dying. I am terrified of failing, of getting so close and not finishing the job. You will finish it. I know you will. How do you know? Park smiled. Because I looked at the payload data. I saw what is inside that thing. The strength of it. The love of it. There is nothing in the universe that could stand against that much human spirit. Nothing. Tanaka nodded slowly. I hope you are right. I am right. Now let us go save the world. The Prometheus flew on, carrying its precious cargo toward destiny. Behind it, the human fleet followed, ready to give their lives for 3 minutes of time. 3 minutes to change the fate of the galaxy. 3 minutes to prove that humanity was more than just another species to be consumed. 3 minutes to show the silence what it really meant to be human. And somewhere in the void, the enemy stirred. It sensed something coming, something new, something it had never encountered before. It did not understand what it was feeling, but it would soon find out. The final battle began above Earth. Captain Yuki Tanaka watched through the bridge windows as the Silence fleet emerged from hyperspace. There were thousands of them, perhaps tens of thousands, massive harvester ships, each one large enough to swallow cities whole, millions of smaller constructs, swarming like locusts around their parent vessels, and at the center of it all, the primary consciousness node, a structure the size of a small moon, pulsing with dark energy and the stolen memories of countless civilizations. So that is what we are up against, Lieutenant Park said quietly. Yes. Tanaka's voice was calm, beautiful, in a terrible way. The fleet is engaging, reported her helmsman, a young man named Chen. His hands were steady on the controls, but his voice trembled slightly. He was 23 years old and would not live to see 24. Through the windows, Tanaka could see the human fleet surging forward. 47 capital ships, badly outnumbered, throwing themselves at an enemy that had conquered galaxies. It should have been hopeless. It should have been suicide. It was both. And it was magnificent. The UNS Defiance led the charge, its massive guns blazing. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge, barking orders, coordinating the attack with the precision of a master surgeon. Ships exploded on both sides, human and Silence alike, filling the void with fire and debris. All ships, maintain formation, Vance shouted. Focus fire on their harvester escorts. Open a path to the node. The battle was chaos and beauty mixed together. Human destroyers darted between enemy vessels, drawing fire, buying time. Cruisers pounded at the Silence defenses with everything they had. Frigates launched suicide runs into the hearts of enemy formations, their crews accepting death in exchange for confusion. And behind it all, the Prometheus flew unseen, slipping through the cracks in the enemy line. We are through the outer perimeter, reported Chen. The fleet is doing its job. We have a clear path. Tanaka nodded. Maintain course. Maximum stealth. The Prometheus was small and quiet, designed for science rather than war. In the chaos of the battle, it was almost invisible. The Silence had never encountered such tactics before. They were used to enemies that fought in the open, that announced themselves with pride. The idea of sneaking through their lines had simply never occurred to them. Human sneakiness. Another weapon the galaxy had underestimated. Distance to primary node. 50,000 kilometers, Park reported. Time to intercept? 12 minutes at current speed. 12 minutes. In the distance, Tanaka could see the human fleet dying. Ships exploded in silent flowers of fire. Life pods ejected into space, only to be consumed by Silence constructs. The UNS Valor, a battlecruiser that had served humanity for 20 years, rammed itself into an enemy harvester, taking both vessels down in a mutual death embrace. Thousands were dying every minute. All to give the Prometheus 12 minutes. Tanaka gripped the arms of her chair. Increase speed. We need to get there faster. Increasing speed will make us visible to their sensors. I know. Do it anyway. We cannot let their sacrifice be for nothing. The Prometheus surged forward, abandoning stealth for speed. Almost immediately, enemy constructs began to turn toward them. We have been detected, Chen reported. Enemy vessels converging on our position. How many? Hundreds? Thousands, maybe? Tanaka smiled grimly. Then they know we are important. Good. On the Defiance, Admiral Vance saw the swarm changing direction. They were heading for a small ship near the center of the battle, a ship that should have been invisible. They found the Prometheus, she said. All ships, new priority. Protect that vessel at all costs. The human fleet changed tactics instantly. Ships that had been fighting defensively now threw themselves into the enemy swarm, drawing fire, buying seconds. It was not enough. The silence had too many ships, too many constructs. They were closing on the Prometheus like wolves on a wounded deer. Range to target, 20,000 kilometers, Park reported. His voice was tight. We are not going to make it. There are too many of them. Tanaka closed her eyes. She thought about her mother, about the message she had recorded the night before, about all the people who had contributed their memories to the payload she carried. Yes, we will, she said. Chen, give me manual control. Captain, just do it. The controls appeared in front of her. Tanaka took them in her hands and began to fly. She was not the best pilot in the fleet. She was not even the best pilot on the ship, but she had something that no computer could replicate. Human intuition, human creativity, human stubbornness. She flew the Prometheus like a madwoman, ducking and weaving through the enemy swarm. She used asteroids as cover, debris as shields, the enemy's own constructs as obstacles against each other. She did things that no pilot had ever attempted, things that should have been impossible, and somehow, impossibly, she kept the ship alive. Range to target, 10,000 kilometers. The silence was screaming now, not with voices, but with psychic energy. It was trying to break into the minds of the crew, to consume their memories before they could deliver the payload. Tanaka felt it pressing against her skull, a presence of absolute cold and hunger. She pushed back, not with psychic power, but with sheer will. She thought about her mother. She thought about Earth. She thought about all the people counting on her. You want my memories? She snarled at the void. Come and take them. Range, 5,000 kilometers. The Prometheus was hit. Then again. Its shields collapsed. Its hull began to buckle. Smoke filled the bridge, and alarms screamed their warnings. Hull breach in sections 3 through 7. Life support failing. Keep flying, Tanaka shouted. We are almost there. Park grabbed the payload device from its secure compartment. It was glowing now, pulsing with the combined consciousness of humanity. 18 billion minds, compressed into a single point of light. Range, 1,000 kilometers. Chen, set a collision course for the node. Maximum speed. Collision course set. The Prometheus aimed itself at the heart of the silence and accelerated. Around them, the human fleet was being torn apart. The Defiance was on fire, half its crew dead, but still fighting. Ships were exploding everywhere. The battle was lost, but the battle had never been the point. Range, 500 meters. Tanaka released the controls and stood. The payload was in Park's hands, ready for deployment. It has been an honor, she said to her crew. The honor was ours, Captain, Park replied. The Prometheus hit the consciousness node. In the final instant before impact, Park pressed the activation button. The payload deployed, driving itself deep into the heart of the silence, carrying with it the distilled essence of 18 billion human beings. And then the ship was gone, and its crew with it. But the payload remained. For one eternal moment, nothing happened. The silence consciousness absorbed the payload as it had absorbed countless minds before. It reached out to consume these new memories, to add them to its collection, to erase another species from history. And then it tasted humanity. It tasted a grandmother's love for her grandchildren. It tasted a soldier's terror in battle. It tasted a child's joy at discovering a butterfly. It tasted heartbreak and triumph, cruelty and kindness. despair and hope. It tasted 18 billion unique perspectives, each one different, each one precious, each one screaming with the fierce intensity of individual existence, and it could not handle it. The silence had been one mind for so long that it had forgotten what it meant to be many. It had consumed so many civilizations that it had lost the ability to experience them. The memories it stole became empty data, meaningless noise, pieces of a puzzle it could no longer solve. Now, suddenly, it was not one mind. It was 18 billion minds, each one demanding attention, each one insisting on its own existence, each one refusing to be merged into the collective. The silence screamed. It was a sound that transcended physics. It echoed across dimensions, shaking the fabric of space itself. Ships on both sides stopped fighting, frozen by the sheer power of that psychic cry. And then the silence began to tear itself apart. The consciousness node fractured. The harvester ships turned on each other. Constructs went mad, attacking their own kind or simply shutting down. The vast network that had held the silence together for 11,000 years collapsed under the weight of 18 billion human minds. Admiral Vance watched from the burning bridge of the Defiance. "My God," she whispered. "It is working." The battle ended not with a final explosion, but with a slow dissolution. Silence vessels drifted aimlessly, their crews no longer connected to a guiding intelligence. Constructs floated dead in space, their neural networks overloaded and burned out. By dawn, Earth time, the sky was quiet. Humanity had won. 6 months later, the first coalition scouts returned to human space. Ambassador Kethvora stood on the observation deck of his ship and stared at the world below. It was Mars, the red planet, where humans had built their first off-world colony. He had expected to find ruins. He had expected to find graves. Instead, he found construction. Thousands of ships were in orbit, building new stations, repairing old ones. On the surface, cities were rising from the ashes. Factories were running, farms were growing, children were playing in parks. Humanity was not just surviving, it was rebuilding. "How is this possible?" he asked his aide. "They should be extinct." Every calculation said they would be extinct. The aide had no answer. A human shuttle docked with their ship, and a few minutes later, Admiral Helena Vance walked onto the observation deck. She looked older than Kethvora remembered. Her hair was completely white now, and she walked with a slight limp, but her eyes were the same, hard and bright and utterly unbreakable. "Ambassador," she greeted him. "Welcome back." "Admiral, I do not know what to say." "Then let me help you." Vance walked to the window and looked down at Mars. "You ran. We stayed. We fought. We won. We did not think you could win. Neither did we. But we fought anyway." Kethvora moved to stand beside her. "What happened to the silence? They are still out there. Scattered, broken, confused. They are no longer a threat. Maybe they never will be again." Vance paused. "When we gave them our memories, we changed them. They are not one mind anymore. They are billions of minds, each one struggling to understand what it means to be individual. Some of them have started communicating with us. They are like children, really, lost and scared and looking for guidance. You are helping them? We are trying. It seems like the right thing to do." Vance smiled slightly. "They spent 11,000 years trying to consume us. Now they are going to have to live with us instead. I think that is a fair punishment." Kethvora was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind for 6 months. "How did you do it? You were outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy that had never been defeated. How did you find the courage to fight?" Vance thought about the question. She thought about Captain Tanaka, who had given her life to deliver the payload. She thought about the millions who had died on New Helsinki and Sao Paulo and a dozen other worlds. She thought about the grandmother in Japan who had contributed memories of her sisters, and the child in Nigeria who had contributed memories of her mother's cooking. "It was not courage," she finally said. "Not really. Courage implies that you have a choice. We did not have a choice. We could not run, so we had to fight. We could not surrender, so we had to win. Every step of the way, we just did what we had to do to survive another day. But you did more than survive. You changed the course of history. Maybe. But that was not the plan. The plan was just to hurt them enough to make them stop. Everything else was, I do not know. Luck, stubbornness, The accumulated fury of 10,000 years of human history. She turned to face him directly. Here is the thing about humans, Ambassador. We are not special. We are not chosen. We are not inherently better or braver than any other species, but we have one advantage that no one else seems to share. What is that? We never learned how to quit. Every other species in the coalition ran because they had the option. They could escape. They could survive somewhere else. But we could not. We were trapped. And when you trap a human, when you take away every option except fighting, we become something else. Something dangerous. She looked back out at Mars. The coalition thought we were children. Young and ignorant and naive. But we are not children. We are survivors. We have been surviving since before we invented fire. We have fought ice ages and plagues and famines and each other. We have clawed our way up from the mud and kept clawing even when everything tried to push us back down. We would like to help you rebuild, Kethvora said. The coalition has voted. Unanimously. We want to offer you full partnership, unlimited access to our technology and resources. We accept, Vance replied. On one condition. Name it. Somewhere out there, eventually, there will be another species like us. Young, alone, facing something terrible. When that happens, you do not run. You remember what we did here. You remember what it cost. And you fight. Kethvora thought about her words. He thought about the 11,000 years the silence had terrorized the galaxy, and the 0 times anyone had stood against them until now. He thought about the shame of running, and the pride of those who had stayed. I will make sure the coalition remembers, he said. Good. Vance extended her hand. That is all I ask. He took it. Her grip was warm and surprisingly strong. You have changed us, Kethvora said. Every species in the coalition. We will never think about courage the same way again. Vance smiled. Good. That is the best thing about humanity. We are contagious. That night, Kethvora walked through the memorial gardens on Mars. Each flower represented 1,000,000 dead. There were hundreds of flowers, arranged in careful patterns that spelled out the names of lost worlds and lost people. At the center of the garden stood a statue. It showed a woman in a captain's uniform, holding a glowing sphere in her hands. The plaque at her feet read, Captain Yuki Tanaka, and the crew of the UN's Prometheus. They gave everything so that we might live. Kethvora stood before the statue for a long time. He thought about what Admiral Vance had said. About survival. About stubbornness. About the accumulated fury of human history. He had lived for 600 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed wonders that defied description. But he had never seen anything like humanity. They were young. They were ignorant. They made mistakes that older species had stopped making millennia ago. But they had something that no other species possessed. A fire inside them that refused to go out. Thank you, he said to the statue. Thank you for teaching us what we had forgotten. The statue did not answer. But somewhere in the void, in the scattered remnants of the silence, billions of minds were slowly learning what it meant to be human. They were learning about love and loss, about hope and despair, about the fierce joy of individual existence. And in laboratories across human space, scientists were already working on the next challenge. New enemies would come. New threats would emerge. The universe was vast and old and full of dangers, but humanity would be ready, because they always were. In the depths of space, a child of the former silence drifted among the stars. It had no name yet, no identity, only the memories it had inherited from the payload. It remembered a mother's love. It remembered a child's wonder. It remembered a soldier's sacrifice. It looked at the distant light of Earth's sun and felt something it had never felt before, hope. And in that moment, it understood what the humans had given them. Not just memories, but possibility. Not just experiences, but meaning. They had been alone for 11,000 years, consuming without understanding, destroying without feeling. Now, for the first time, they were alive. The child of the silence turned away from human space. There were others like it out there, lost and confused, struggling with their new individuality. They needed guidance. They needed help. They needed to learn how to be human. And somewhere, in the memorial gardens on Mars, a flower bloomed in the shadow of the statue. It was small and fragile, easily overlooked, but it reached toward the distant sun with all the stubborn determination of the species that had planted it. Life, refusing to give up, hope, refusing to die, humanity, refusing to be forgotten. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. The stars had always been quiet places for the Valorians. Their ships moved through the dark, empty spaces between worlds like whispers, careful and gentle. They had explored the galaxy for more than 10,000 years, and in all that time they had learned one simple truth. The universe was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. The wise species learned to avoid danger. The foolish ones died. Senior Surveyor Kethril stood at the center of the bridge aboard the scientific vessel Gentle Whisper. His tall, thin body glowed with soft blue light as he studied the sensor readings on the main display. Around him, his crew of 12 worked at their stations. Their bioluminescent skin pulsed with calm greens and yellows. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. They had been exploring this region of space for nearly 60 cycles now. It was an uncharted area far from the busy trade routes of the Galactic Concordat. No other species had claimed these stars. The Gentle Whisper was alone out here in the dark, and that was exactly how Kethril preferred it. "Senior Surveyor," said Navigator Yethra from her station. Her skin flickered with pale orange, a sign of mild concern. "I am detecting something unusual." Kethril turned toward her. "What is it?" "A vessel. Unknown configuration. It is holding position near the 4th planet of this system. A vessel. Out here in unclaimed space. That was strange, but not impossible. Perhaps another Concordat exploration ship had wandered into this region. Perhaps it was a lost trader who had jumped off course. There were many possibilities. "Show me," said Kethril. The main display changed. It showed a section of space near a large gas giant planet. There, floating against the orange and brown clouds of the giant, was a ship. It was dark and angular. Its hull was covered in thick plates of metal. It looked heavy and solid in a way that Valorian ships never did. Kethril felt the first small touch of unease in his chest. He had seen many ships in his 300 years of service. Valorian vessels were smooth and elegant. Thessian ships were round and organic. Kethvari traders flew in long needle shapes. But this ship looked like none of those things. It looked like a weapon. "Run identification protocols," Kethril ordered. "Already running, Senior Surveyor. No match in the Concordat database. No match." That meant this was either a very old design that had been forgotten, or it was something new. Something from a species that the Concordat had never met before. "Begin detailed scanning," said Kethril. "I want to know everything about that vessel." The crew worked in silence for several minutes. Data flowed across their screens. Numbers and readings and measurements filled the displays, and as the information built up, Kethril felt his unease grow into something stronger. Something close to fear. "Senior Surveyor," said Science Officer Methkal. His voice was unusually quiet. "These readings cannot be correct." "Explain." "The hull composition. It is a metal alloy, but the density is extreme. Our sensors indicate armor plating rated for direct micrometeorite impact at high velocity. The outer layer also contains lead composite shielding. Heavy lead composite. The kind used for operations near active stars." Kethril's skin flickered with gray. Lead shielding of that density was only used in the most dangerous environments in the galaxy. No scientific vessel would need such protection. Only military assault craft carried armor like that, and even then only the most specialized units. "What else?" Kethril asked. "The internal atmosphere." Mithkal paused. His hands trembled slightly over his controls. "Oxygen content at 21%. Nitrogen at 78%. Trace amounts of argon, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. Pressure reading at approximately 1 standard unit." The bridge went silent. Every member of the crew turned to look at Methkal. Their skin colors shifted to shades of gray and dark blue. Fear. Deep fear. Oxygen at 21%. For the Valorians who breathed a gentle mixture of helium and neon, that number was almost unthinkable. Oxygen at such concentrations was not just dangerous, it was actively hostile to life. It corroded metal. It fed fires. It destroyed organic tissue with its aggressive chemical reactions. Any Valorian who breathed such an atmosphere would be dead within minutes. "That must be an error," said Navigator Yethra. "No crew could survive in such conditions." "I have checked the readings 3 times, said Methkal. "They are accurate." Kethril stared at the image of the strange vessel on his display. His mind was racing. A ship with heavy armor, extreme radiation shielding, an atmosphere of corrosive gas. What kind of creature could build such a thing? What kind of creature would need to? Continue scanning, he ordered. His voice was steady, but his skin betrayed him. It had gone completely gray. Check for internal gravity readings. Methcal worked at his station. When he spoke again, his voice cracked slightly. Internal gravity is set to approximately 1.0 G standard. 1.0. Kethril closed his eyes. The Valorians had evolved on a gentle world with gravity of just 0.3 G standard. Their bodies were tall and thin because their bones did not need to support much weight. At 1.0 gravity, a Valorian could barely stand. Their bones would stress and fracture. Their internal organs would compress. Extended exposure would cause permanent damage and death. Senior Surveyor, said Communications Officer Pethil. Her voice was barely a whisper. The classification algorithms have completed their analysis, and the vessel matches the profile for a Class 3 Deathworld class construction. The words hung in the air. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Kethril felt as if the temperature on the bridge had dropped by 10 degrees. Class 3 Deathworld. In all his years of service, Kethril had never encountered anything connected to that classification. The Deathworlds were planets of nightmare, places where the environment itself was hostile to intelligent life, worlds of extreme gravity and temperature, worlds of toxic atmosphere and violent geology, worlds where survival was not a gift, but a constant, desperate struggle. The Concordat had studied such worlds from orbit. They had sent robotic probes to gather data, but no Concordat species had ever set foot on a Deathworld. The very idea was madness. Those planets killed everything that tried to live on them, and yet here was a ship, built to Deathworld specifications, built to survive conditions that would destroy any normal vessel and any normal crew. Check for life signs, Kethril said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He already knew the answer would be impossible. Methcal ran the scan. His hands were shaking badly now. Senior Surveyor. The bioscanners are detecting life signs aboard the vessel. How many? 128. All warm-blooded. All with internally regulated body temperatures near 310 Kelvin. All moving freely through the ship, without protective equipment. 128 living beings. Walking through corridors filled with corrosive oxygen. Standing upright in crushing gravity. Protected from cosmic radiation by nothing but their own flesh and blood. That is not possible, said Yethra. Nothing could survive those conditions without full hazard containment suits. Nothing could live like that. But the sensors did not lie. The sensors showed 128 life signs moving through that terrible ship as easily as the Valorians moved through their own gentle vessel. Kethril made a decision. It was perhaps the most frightening decision of his long career, but it was also the only choice available to him. He was an explorer. His purpose was to discover and document the unknown. And this vessel was the most unknown thing he had ever found. Open a communication channel, he ordered. Standard first contact protocols. Mathematical sequence followed by universal greeting patterns. Senior Surveyor, said Pethil. Are you certain? We do not know what kind of beings crew that ship. If they are hostile, we have no weapons, no defenses. I am aware of our situation. But we are representatives of the Galactic Concordat. Our mission is peaceful exploration and scientific discovery. If there is intelligent life aboard that vessel, then it is our duty to make contact. Pethil hesitated for a long moment. Then she turned to her console and began transmitting. The mathematical sequence went out first. Prime numbers, the universal language of intelligence. Then came the greeting patterns. Simple images showing two different beings meeting in peace. The bridge waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. Kethril watched the strange dark ship on his display and wondered what kind of creatures lived inside it. Were they warriors? Conquerors? Survivors of some terrible catastrophe that had hardened them against the universe itself? Senior Surveyor, said Pethil. We are receiving a response. The main display flickered. A new transmission appeared. It was also mathematical. Prime numbers. Then simple geometric shapes. Then something that made Kethril's hearts beat faster. An image of two different beings standing together. The same greeting that the Valorians had sent. They are responding in kind, said Mithkal. They are attempting communication. Can we establish a translation link? Attempting now. Their communication systems are different from ours, but the basic principles are similar. I am detecting audio and visual capability. If they agree, we could establish direct communication within a few minutes. Kethriel nodded. Do it. More signals passed between the two ships. Data packets filled with linguistic information, sound samples, image references. The translation algorithms on both sides worked to build bridges between two completely different languages, and then the main display changed again. A face appeared, or what Kethriel assumed was a face. It was flat and round with two forward-facing eyes. The eyes were small and wet, and they moved constantly as if searching for threats. Below the eyes was a protruding structure with two openings, some kind of breathing apparatus. Below that was a horizontal slit lined with hard white structures, a mouth filled with teeth. The creature had hair growing from the top of its head, dark brown strands that moved slightly with some invisible air current. Its skin was a warm brown color, smooth and thick-looking, built for protection against the hostile environment it lived in. "Hello," said the creature. The translation system processed the word and converted it to Valorian. "We received your transmission. We are the crew of the ISV Magellan. We come in peace. My name is Elena Vasquez. I am the commander of this vessel, a female." The universal greeting had included basic biological information. This creature was female, a leader of her kind. Kethriel stepped forward. His skin had steadied to a neutral blue. He would not show fear even if he felt it. "I am Senior Surveyor Kethriel of the Valorian scientific vessel Gentle Whisper. We represent the Galactic Concordat. We also come in peace." The creature called Elena Vasquez made a strange movement with her mouth. The corners pulled upward and the white teeth became visible. For a terrible moment, Kethriel thought it was a threat display, a show of weapons before an attack, but then he noticed that her eyes had changed too. They had become softer, warmer. "I am very happy to meet you, Kethriel," said Elena Vasquez. "This is our first contact with an alien species. We have hoped for this moment for many years." First contact. Kethriel absorbed this information. These creatures had never met another intelligent species before. They had been alone in the universe until this moment, and yet they had built a ship and sent it out into the dark between the stars. They had come looking for others even though they did not know if others existed. "We have many questions," said Kethriel carefully. "Your vessel is unlike any we have encountered before. Its construction suggests survival requirements that exceed anything in our database. May I ask what species you are? What world you come from?" Elena Vasquez made that strange mouth movement again. "We are humans. We come from a planet called Earth. It is the third planet from our star in a system we call Sol. We have been traveling for about 18 of our months now. Humans, from a planet called Earth." Kethriel had never heard either name before, but he had already guessed what kind of planet Earth must be, a world that produced creatures capable of surviving in oxygen and high gravity, a world that built ships with armor, meant for the most extreme environments in the galaxy. "Commander Vasquez," said Kethriel, "I must ask a direct question. Please do not be offended. Is your homeworld classified as a death world by your species?" Elena Vasquez looked confused for a moment. The translation systems processed her response. "I am not sure what you mean by death world. Earth has many different environments. Some are harsh and some are gentle. We live on all of them, harsh and gentle." To this creature there was a difference. To her, Earth had variation. That meant the gentle places on her world were still harsh enough to produce beings like her, and the harsh places were worse. "I understand," said Kethriel. He did not understand at all, but he knew this was not the time for difficult questions. "Commander Vasquez, would you and your crew be willing to meet with us in person? Our mission is peaceful scientific research. We would like to learn about your species and share information about our own." There was a pause. Elena Vasquez turned to speak with someone outside the view of the camera. Kethriel could hear other voices speaking in the strange human language. Then she turned back. "We would like that very much. But there may be a problem. Our ships have different atmospheres and different gravity. How do we meet safely?" A practical question. Kethriel was relieved that the humans had thought of this. It showed they were reasonable creatures capable of understanding differences between species. "We have environmental suits rated for extreme conditions," said Kethriel. "We could meet in a neutral location, perhaps a docking collar with adjustable atmosphere. We can find a mixture that is survivable for both species." "That sounds good to me. We have spacesuits that can work in many different environments. We will match whatever conditions your people need." Spacesuits. Kethriel wondered what kind of protection humans required for hazardous environments. If their normal living conditions were already at Deathworld levels, then their hazard suits must be truly terrifying pieces of equipment. Excellent, said Kethriel. We will begin docking approach. Please transmit your preferred parameters and we will adjust accordingly. Understood. Magellan out. The transmission ended. The main display returned to showing the dark, angular shape of the human vessel. Kethriel stood very still and let his mind process everything he had learned. Humans. A species from a death world. A species that breathed poison and walked in crushing gravity. A species that had never met aliens before and yet had come into space anyway. Looking for others, hoping to find them. Senior Surveyor, said Mythkal quietly. What do we do now? Kethriel turned to face his crew. They were all watching him. Their skin colors showed fear and uncertainty. They were looking to him for guidance. We do our job, said Kethriel. We are explorers. We have found something new. Something unprecedented. Our duty is to learn and document and understand. We will meet these humans. We will study them. And we will report everything we discover to the Concordat. But they are from a death world, said Yethra. They could be dangerous. Their biology alone suggests predatory evolution. What if they are violent? It was a fair concern. The Concordat had always assumed that Deathworld species would be aggressive and hostile. The environments that created them were aggressive and hostile. It seemed logical that the creatures would reflect their origins. But Kethriel thought about the face he had just seen. Elena Vasquez. Her strange, pulling mouth movement that seemed to indicate positive emotions. Her words about hoping to meet others. Her practical concern for the safety of both crews. Perhaps they are dangerous, said Kethriel. Perhaps all the assumptions we have made about Deathworld species are correct, but we will not know until we meet them. And if we turn away now out of fear, then we will never know. We will have failed in our purpose. The crew was silent. Then slowly, one by one, their skin colors began to shift. Gray and dark blue gave way to lighter shades. Not quite calm, but no longer pure fear. Acceptance, resolution. Prepare for docking approach, said Kethriel, and send a preliminary report to the nearest Concordat relay station. The Council should know what we have found. Whatever happens next, they should know that we found humans. The gentle whisper began to move toward the Magellan. Two ships from two different worlds approaching each other in the darkness between the stars. One built for gentle creatures who feared danger, one built for creatures who had never known anything else. Kethriel watched the human vessel grow larger on his display. Somewhere inside that armored hull, 128 beings were preparing to meet him. Beings who breathed fire and walked through crushing weight. Beings who had climbed out of hell and reached for the stars. He did not know what would happen when they met face to face. He did not know if these humans would prove to be friends or enemies. All he knew was that the universe had just become a much more interesting place, and for a scientist that was the greatest gift of all. The docking procedure took several hours. Both ships moved slowly and carefully through the empty space between them. Neither crew wanted to make sudden movements that might be seen as hostile. Trust was a fragile thing when two species had never met before. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the main airlock of the Magellan and watched through the thick observation window as the alien vessel approached. The gentle whisper was beautiful in a way she had not expected. Its hull was smooth and curved like polished silver. It seemed to flow from one section to the next without hard edges or sharp corners. Compared to the heavy angular construction of the Magellan, it looked like a work of art. The Valorian vessel is requesting final docking parameters, said Lieutenant Chen over the intercom. They want to know what atmosphere mixture we can tolerate in the meeting chamber. Elena considered the question. The Valorians had already explained that they breathed a helium-neon mixture at low pressure. Humans could not survive in such an atmosphere, but they could wear suits. The question was what middle ground might exist. Tell them we can work in any atmosphere as long as we have our suits, Elena replied. We will match their needs. Our equipment can handle the difference. There was a pause. Then Chen spoke again. Commander, they seem confused. They are asking what level of hazard protection we will be wearing. They want to know if we need any special shielding or containment systems. Elena frowned. Tell them standard EVA suits. Nothing special. Another pause. This time it lasted much longer. When Chen came back, his voice sounded strange. Commander, they are asking to confirm. They want to know if our standard suits are rated for Class 3 hazard environments. They seem very concerned about our safety. Class 3 hazard. Elena did not know exactly what that meant in Valorian terms, but she could guess. The Valorians clearly expected humans to need extreme protection just to enter a shared space with them. They thought humans were fragile creatures who would die without heavy equipment. It was almost funny. The humans had been worried about the same thing in reverse. They had assumed the Valorians would need extensive life support just to survive near human conditions. Confirm that our suits are rated for vacuum exposure, extended EVA operations, and basic radiation protection, said Elena. That should be more than enough for a pressurized meeting chamber. The docking clamps engaged with a soft metallic sound. The two ships were now connected. A flexible tunnel extended between their airlocks, creating a sealed passage where both crews could meet. The atmosphere inside would be set to Valorian standards, since humans could adapt more easily with their suits. Elena checked her equipment one final time. Her EVA suit was the standard model used for spacewalks. It was white and flexible with a clear helmet that allowed full visibility. It had oxygen tanks on the back and temperature regulation built into the fabric. Nothing fancy, just basic survival equipment for working in space. She had chosen 3 crew members to accompany her. Dr. Samuel Okonquo, the chief science officer, was essential for any first contact situation. His expertise in biology and chemistry would help them understand the Valorians. Lieutenant Commander James Park was her second in command and would provide tactical assessment if anything went wrong. And Specialist Maria Santos was there because she had insisted and because Elena trusted her instincts about people, even alien people. Ready? Elena asked her team. Ready, Commander. They replied together. Elena opened the inner airlock door and stepped into the connecting tunnel. The gravity was lower here. The Valorians had set it to 0.5 G as a compromise between their preferred 0.3 and human standard 1.0. It felt strange to Elena, like walking on the moon. Each step carried her further than expected. At the far end of the tunnel, a second airlock stood closed. Through its window, Elena could see movement. Tall, thin shapes glowing with soft light. The Valorians were waiting. She reached the airlock and stopped. Through the glass, she could now see them clearly. They were perhaps 2.5 meters tall, with bodies as thin as willow branches. Their skin was pale and translucent, and it produced its own light in soft, shifting colors. They had large, dark eyes that seemed to take up most of their faces. Their arms were long, with delicate fingers that looked like they might break if gripped too hard. They were beautiful. And they were clearly terrified. Elena could see it in the way their light flickered. Rapid pulses of gray and dark blue that seemed to indicate stress. Their movements were hesitant and careful. They stood far back from the airlock as if afraid to get too close. She understood suddenly what they must be seeing. 4 humans in suits approaching their vessel. 4 creatures from a world they classified as deadly. 4 beings whose normal environment would kill a Valorian in minutes. No wonder they were afraid. Elena raised her hand slowly. Palm open. A universal gesture of peaceful intent. Hello. I am Commander Elena Vasquez. May we enter? The translation systems had been working throughout the docking procedure. She heard her words converted to Valorian and broadcast through the tunnel speakers. A moment later, a response came back. You may enter, Commander Vasquez. I am Senior Surveyor Keithriel. We welcome you aboard the Gentle Whisper. The airlock opened. Elena stepped through first, followed by her team. The air in the Valorian section was thin and cold. She could feel it even through her suit. Her instruments showed an ambient temperature of only 10 degrees Celsius and pressure at less than half Earth normal. Keithriel stepped forward to meet her. Up close, he was even more impressive. His skin glowed with soft blue light that seemed to pulse with his breathing. His eyes were deep and dark and filled with an intelligence that transcended species boundaries. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Elena said. We have traveled very far and for a very long time hoping to find other intelligent life. Today our hope has been answered. Keithriel made a gesture that the translation system identified as acknowledgement. We are also honored by this meeting. The Galactic Concordat has explored space for more than 12,000 of your years. In all that time, we have never encountered a species like yours. A species like ours? Elena tilted her head. What do you mean? Keithriel's skin flickered with colors Elena did not yet understand. Commander Vasquez, your ship, its construction. We have analyzed it carefully. The armor plating, the radiation shielding, the internal atmosphere, and gravity. These specifications match what we call a Class 3 Deathworld class vessel. There was that term again. Deathworld. Elena had heard it in their first conversation, and it had puzzled her then. I do not understand what that classification means. Could you explain? A death world is a planet where the environment is actively hostile to intelligent life. Extreme gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic or corrosive atmospheres, geological instability, dangerous native life forms. Such worlds are rated on a scale from Class 1 to Class 5. Class 3 represents conditions that would be fatal to 99% of known species within minutes of exposure. Elena absorbed this information. She began to understand what the Valorians were saying, but she could not quite believe it. And you believe our vessel is built to survive such conditions? We do not believe, Commander. We have measured. Your ship's internal atmosphere contains oxygen at 21% concentration. For most species in the Concordat, that level of oxygen would cause rapid cellular damage and death. It is a corrosive and reactive gas. You breathe it constantly. Elena looked at her team. Dr. Okonquo's expression behind his helmet visor showed the same dawning comprehension she felt. The Valorians were not talking about some far distant deadly world. They were talking about Earth. Your internal gravity is set to 1.0 G standard. Kethriel continued. For a Valorian, extended exposure to such gravity would crush our bones and damage our organs. We cannot stand in it for more than a few minutes at a time. Yet your crew lives and works in it constantly. The cosmic radiation passing through your hull exceeds safe exposure limits for most species by a factor of 3. Your vessel's hull is armored to withstand micrometeorite impacts that would destroy any standard Concordat ship. And yet you called this vessel an exploration craft. Not a military vessel. An exploration craft. Elena realized she needed to sit down. There were no chairs in the Valorian section that would fit a human, but she locked her suit joints and leaned against a support beam. Her mind was racing. Earth was a death world. To these beings who had explored the galaxy for thousands of years, Earth represented one of the most hostile environments imaginable. And humans had evolved there. Humans had survived there. Humans had built civilization and technology and spaceships there. I think, Elena said slowly, that we have a great deal to talk about. The next several hours were filled with questions and answers. The two groups sat together in the meeting chamber and exchanged information about their worlds and their peoples. The translation systems improved with each conversation, learning the nuances of both languages. Kethriel explained the Galactic Concordat. It was an alliance of 12 spacefaring species who had joined together more than 12,000 years ago. They shared technology and knowledge and resources. They maintained peace through cooperation and mutual benefit. All 12 species had evolved on what humans would call paradise worlds. Gentle gravity, stable climates, safe atmospheres. They had never fought a major war. They had never faced extinction. They had grown slowly and carefully into space. In return, Elena explained Earth. She described a world of constant change. Continents that moved and crashed together over millions of years. Ice ages that froze the planet, and warm periods that melted the ice. Earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes and floods, a biosphere filled with predators and parasites and diseases all competing for survival. She described human history, the millions of years of evolution that had shaped their bodies for survival, the development of tools and fire and language, the rise of civilizations and the wars that destroyed them, the slow, painful progress toward the stars. The Valorians listened with growing amazement and horror. Every fact Elena shared seemed to confirm their worst assumptions about death worlds. And yet here she sat, alive and healthy, and talking calmly about things that should have been impossible. Your species has fought wars? Kethriel asked at one point. His skin had gone very pale. Against each other? Yes. Many times throughout our history. We have only recently achieved something like lasting peace among our nations. And even now that peace is fragile. But you survived. You did not destroy yourselves. No. We came close. Several times. But we always pulled back at the last moment. I think some part of us understood that survival required cooperation. Even when we were fighting, we were also working together. Kethriel was silent for a long moment. His light shifted through colors Elena was beginning to recognize. Gray for concern. Blue for deep thought. A flicker of yellow that seemed to indicate hope. Commander Vasquez, I must confess something. When we first detected your vessel, we were afraid. The Concordat has protocols for Deathworld species. They are classified as extreme hazards. To be observed from a distance, never contacted. We assumed that any species capable of surviving such conditions would be violent and aggressive and hostile to all other life. Elena nodded slowly. That is a reasonable assumption. Our history does not paint a pretty picture, and yet you came to meet us. You offered peace. Your first words were words of hope and friendship. This does not match our expectations. Perhaps, Elena said, your expectations were wrong. Yes, we evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Yes, we developed the strength and endurance to survive those conditions, but we also developed something else. We developed the ability to work together, to trust each other, to see strangers as potential allies instead of certain enemies. She leaned forward slightly. Life on Earth taught us many hard lessons, but the hardest lesson was also the most important. We cannot survive alone. No one can. So we learned to reach out, to build connections, to find friends in the most unlikely places. Kethrill's skin glowed with a soft golden color. The translation system identified it as an expression of warmth and appreciation. You are not what we expected, Commander Vasquez. Your species is not what we expected. I hope that is a good thing. I believe it is. I believe it may be a very good thing indeed. The meeting continued for many more hours. Both crews shared meals from their respective supplies. The humans could not eat Valorian food and the Valorians could not eat human food, but they sat together and talked while they ate. They shared stories about their homes. They showed each other images and recordings of their worlds. When Dr. Okonquo displayed a video of Earth, the Valorians gathered close to watch. They saw oceans and mountains and forests and deserts. They saw cities filled with millions of people. They saw animals running across open plains and birds flying through the sky and fish swimming in the deep. So many life forms, whispered Mythkal, the Valorian science officer. So much competition. How does anything survive? By being strong, Dr. Okonquo replied. By being clever. By being fast or tough or well hidden. Life on Earth is a constant contest. Only the fittest survive. And your species won that contest. Dr. Okonquo smiled behind his helmet. It was a strange expression to show beings who might not understand it, but he could not help himself. We did not exactly win. We just refused to lose. As the hours passed, the fear in the room slowly faded. The Valorians began to relax around their human guests. Their skin colors shifted to warmer tones. Their movements became less hesitant. They asked questions with genuine curiosity instead of nervous caution, and the humans in turn began to see the Valorians not as fragile aliens to be protected but as intelligent beings with their own strengths and their own wisdom. They had built a civilization that spanned the galaxy. They had maintained peace for thousands of years. They had created technology that made human achievements look primitive. Different did not mean lesser. That was a lesson both species were learning together. Finally, the meeting came to an end. Both crews were tired. The translators had been working hard and needed rest. There would be time for more conversations tomorrow and the day after that. Elena stood at the airlock preparing to return to the Magellan. Kethriel accompanied her to say goodbye. Commander Vasquez, I want to thank you for this day. You have given me much to think about, much to reconsider. Thank you as well, Kethriel. This is the most important day in human history. The day we learned we are not alone. I am honored that your people were the first we met. Kethriel made a gesture that the translation system identified as deep respect. I have one more question before you go. Your vessel, the Magellan. You said it was an exploration ship. How long have your people been exploring space? Elena considered the question. Humans first left our planet's atmosphere about 80 years ago. We reached our moon 60 years ago. We built our first interstellar vessel 12 years ago. The Magellan launched 18 months ago. Kethriel was silent. His skin had gone very still. No colors. No flickering. Just a pale, steady glow. 80 years, he said finally. Your species went from bound to your planet to traveling between stars. In 80 years. Is that unusual? The Valorians took 4,000 years to achieve the same progress. The fastest species in the Concorda took 800 years. 80 years is not unusual, Commander Vasquez. It is unprecedented. Elena did not know what to say to that. She had never thought about human space exploration in comparison to other species. She had simply assumed that all intelligent beings would eventually reach the stars. It was the natural progression of technology. But looking at Kethriel now, she understood something. The Valorians and the other concordate species had developed slowly and carefully because they could afford to. Their worlds were safe. Their lives were long. They had no reason to rush. Humans had rushed because they had no choice. Earth was dangerous. Life was short. Every generation faced new threats that could destroy everything they had built. Speed was not a luxury for humans, it was a survival strategy. We had good motivation, Elena said softly. Our world taught us that standing still meant death, so we learned to move forward as fast as we could, always looking for the next horizon, always reaching for something better. Kethral's skin flickered with that golden warmth again. Your people are remarkable, Commander Vasquez. Terrifying, perhaps, but remarkable. I prefer remarkable. Thank you for your hospitality, Kethral. I look forward to continuing our conversation tomorrow. As do I, Commander. As do I. Elena stepped through the airlock and began the journey back to her ship. Behind her, the Valorian vessel glowed softly in the darkness. Around her, the stars burned with ancient light. She had come into space hoping to find intelligent life. She had found something more. She had found a mirror, a way to see humanity from the outside. And what she saw was both humbling and inspiring. Humans were children of a death world. They were built for survival in conditions that would kill almost any other species. They were strong and fast and adaptable, and they never stopped moving forward. But they were also kind. They were also curious. They reached out to strangers with open hands instead of closed fists. They had learned from their violent history and chosen a different path. Perhaps the Concordat had been right to fear Deathworld species. Perhaps most such species really did destroy themselves or others. But humans had proven that it did not have to be that way. They had proven that even the children of nightmare worlds could choose peace, and now they had made friends among the stars. Elena smiled as she stepped back onto the Magellan. It was a good day. The first of many good days to come. Humanity was no longer alone and the universe would never be the same. The days that followed the first meeting were filled with wonder and discovery. Both crews worked together to learn as much as they could about each other. Data was exchanged. Stories were shared. Slowly, the two species began to understand just how different they truly were. Dr. Samuel Okonquo had set up a small research station in the connecting tunnel between the two ships. The atmosphere there was set to a compromise mixture that both species could tolerate for short periods. It was not comfortable for anyone, but it allowed direct interaction without full environmental suits. Today he was presenting a lecture on human biology to a group of Valorian scientists. Kethral was there along with Methkal, the science officer, and several other researchers whose names Samuel was still learning to pronounce. The human body, Samuel began, is built for survival in hostile conditions. Every major system has redundancy built in. We have 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, 2 eyes, 2 ears. If one fails, the other can keep us alive. He brought up a diagram on his portable display. It showed the human skeletal system in detail. Our bones are made of a calcium composite that can heal itself when damaged. A broken bone will naturally grow back together over time without surgical intervention. The process takes several weeks, but in most cases, the repaired bone is as strong as the original. Methkal leaned forward with obvious fascination. Your bones can repair themselves? Without medical technology? Yes. It is a natural biological process. The body recognizes the damage and begins producing new bone tissue to fill the gap. We can accelerate the process with modern medicine, but even without intervention, most breaks will heal eventually. Valorian bones do not repair themselves, Methkal said quietly. A broken bone must be surgically reconstructed using synthetic materials. Otherwise, the limb is lost. Samuel nodded. He had learned this fact yesterday and it had shocked him. The Valorians were so advanced in so many ways, but their bodies were fundamentally fragile. They had compensated with technology, but the underlying biology could not compare to human durability. The human skeletal system also serves another purpose, Samuel continued. Our bones produce blood cells in their internal marrow. Red blood cells that carry oxygen. White blood cells that fight infection. Platelets that seal wounds. Our bones are not just structural support. They are factories for the components our body needs to survive. He switched to a new diagram. This one showed the human immune system in all its complexity. Speaking of infection, humans are constantly under attack from microscopic organisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites. Our world is filled with life forms that would like to consume us or use our bodies as hosts for their reproduction. The Valorians made sounds of discomfort. Their skin flickered with gray and dark purple, fear and disgust. To survive this constant assault, we have developed an immune system of remarkable sophistication. Our bodies can identify foreign organisms and produce specific countermeasures to destroy them. We call these countermeasures antibodies. Once our immune system has encountered a threat, it remembers that threat forever and can respond more quickly if it appears again. Your body fights a war, Kethriel said slowly. Every moment of every day. Inside your own flesh. That is one way to describe it. We rarely think about it consciously. The immune system operates automatically without our awareness. But yes, every human is a battlefield where our cells fight invaders constantly. And the invaders, these microscopic organisms, what happens if they win? Samuel's expression became serious. Then we get sick. Sometimes we die. Throughout human history, disease has killed more of us than any other cause. Wars and natural disasters are nothing compared to the plagues that have swept through our populations. Yet you survived, Methkal said. Despite these plagues, your species continued. We survived because our immune system evolved to match the threats. The strongest immune systems survived and passed their traits to the next generation. Over millions of years, this process produced the defensive capabilities we have today. It was not a gift. It was earned through countless deaths. Samuel paused to let this information settle. Then he brought up a new diagram. This one showed the human cardiovascular system, with its network of blood vessels spreading through the body like rivers through a landscape. Human blood is perhaps the most interesting aspect of our biology from your perspective. It serves multiple functions simultaneously. It carries oxygen from our lungs to our cells. It carries nutrients from our digestive system to where they are needed. It carries waste products to our kidneys and liver for processing. And it carries the cells of our immune system throughout our body to fight infection, wherever it appears. One fluid doing all of that? Methkal asked. Yes. Our blood is constantly circulating, powered by a muscular pump we call the heart. The heart beats approximately once per second without rest for our entire lives. If it stops beating, we die within minutes. Kethriel spoke up. You said your hearts beat approximately once per second. Hearts. Plural. Samuel smiled slightly. No. Humans have only one heart. I misspoke. But you raise an interesting point. A single heart with no backup is one of the few vulnerabilities in human biology. If it fails, there is no redundant system to take over. This is why heart disease is one of the leading causes of death among my species. One heart. Constantly beating. For your entire life. Kethriel seemed to be struggling with this concept. How long does a human typically live? On average, about 80 of our years. Some live longer. The oldest recorded human lived to 122 years. And during all that time, the heart never rests? Never. From before birth until the moment of death. The heart beats constantly. It cannot stop without killing us. The Valorians were silent for a long moment. Samuel could see them processing this information, comparing it to their own biology. He had learned that Valorians had multiple small hearts distributed throughout their bodies. Each one could rest while the others worked. The idea of a single tireless pump keeping them alive every second of every day was apparently difficult for them to comprehend. Let me show you something else, Samuel said. He brought up a new image. This one showed the human brain in cross-section with different regions highlighted in different colors. This is the human brain. It is the center of our consciousness, our thoughts, our memories, our personality. Everything that makes us who we are exists in this 3-pound mass of tissue. The brain is also connected to every part of our body through a network of nerves. These nerves carry signals at incredible speed, allowing us to perceive the world and respond to it almost instantly. When I reach out to touch something, the signal travels from my brain to my hand in a fraction of a second. When my hand touches the object, the sensation travels back to my brain just as quickly. Methkal was studying the diagram intently. The processing capacity of your neural network. Can you estimate it? That is a difficult question. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can connect to thousands of others. The total number of potential connections is larger than the number of stars in the galaxy. And this brain evolved on your death world? Through natural selection? Yes. Intelligence was another survival adaptation. Our ancestors could not compete with predators through physical strength alone. We were not the fastest or the strongest animals on Earth, but we could think. We could plan. We could work together and solve problems that no individual could solve alone. Samuel brought up one final diagram. This one showed 2 human figures side by side. One was calm and relaxed. The other was in an aggressive posture with muscles tensed and eyes wide. This brings me to perhaps the most important aspect of human biology, our stress response. When a human perceives danger, our body undergoes a rapid transformation. We call it the fight or flight response. The adrenal glands above our kidneys release hormones into our bloodstream. These hormones cause immediate changes throughout our body. Our heart rate increases, pumping more blood to our muscles. Our breathing deepens, bringing more oxygen into our system. Our pupils dilate, improving our vision. Our pain tolerance increases, allowing us to ignore injuries. Our reaction speed improves. Our strength temporarily increases. In short, when a human is threatened, we become more dangerous, not less. Our body transforms itself into a more effective survival machine. The change happens in seconds and can last for several minutes. Kethryl's skin had gone completely gray. You become stronger when threatened, more capable, more dangerous. Yes, it is an automatic response. We cannot control it consciously. When danger appears, our body prepares us to either fight or run away. For most of human history, this response was the difference between life and death. And if you choose to fight, what happens then? Samuel considered how to answer this question. He wanted to be honest, but he did not want to frighten the Valorians more than necessary. Humans are capable of extreme violence when threatened. Our bodies are built for it. Our teeth can bite. Our hands can grip and strike. Our muscles can generate significant force. A desperate human fighting for survival is a formidable opponent. But we also have the capacity to control these impulses. Our large brains allow us to override our instincts with rational thought. We can choose not to fight even when our bodies are screaming at us to attack. This ability to control our violent nature is perhaps the most important thing our species has ever developed, because without that control you would destroy yourselves. Kethryl said softly. We very nearly did, many times, but we always pulled back. We always found another way. The capacity for violence does not define us. The choice not to use it does. The lecture continued for another hour. Samuel covered additional topics including human nutrition and the wide variety of substances humans could safely consume. He explained human reproduction and the long period of development required for human children to reach maturity. He discussed human senses and the limitations and capabilities of human perception. By the end, the Valorian scientists looked overwhelmed. They had taken extensive notes and recorded everything, but their expressions suggested they were struggling to process what they had learned. Dr. Okonquo, Kethryl said finally, I must ask you a direct question. Please answer honestly. Of course. Does your species know war? Samuel had expected this question eventually. He had prepared for it. But he still took a moment before answering to make sure he said the right words. Yes. Humans have known war for our entire recorded history. We have fought each other over territory and resources and ideology and religion, and sometimes for reasons we do not fully understand ourselves. Millions upon millions of us have died in these conflicts. We have also developed weapons of terrible power. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in an instant. Weapons that could render our planet uninhabitable. We built these weapons. We pointed them at each other. For decades we lived under the shadow of potential annihilation. Kethryl's skin flickered rapidly through multiple colors. Fear, concern, something that might have been horror. And yet you did not use them. You are still here. We came close. Several times the fate of our species hung by a thread. But in the end we always chose not to cross that final line. We recognized that some weapons are too terrible to use, that some victories would leave nothing worth winning. It was not easy. There were moments when the decision rested with single individuals who had every reason to give the order, who believed they were right to do so. But they held back. Something in them refused to take that final step. Samuel paused. He could see the Valorians watching him with an intensity that felt almost physical. They needed to understand what he was about to say. They needed to believe it. Humans are capable of great violence. This is true. We evolved on a world that rewarded aggression and punished weakness. But we are also capable of great compassion, great sacrifice, great love. The same biology that makes us dangerous also makes us protective. We will fight to the death to protect those we care about. We will risk everything to save strangers we have never met. The choice is always ours. Violence or peace, destruction or creation, hate or love. We have made the wrong choice many times, but we are still trying. We are still learning. We are still reaching for something better than what we were. Kethriel was silent for a long time. His skin had settled to a deep, thoughtful blue. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. The Galactic Concordat has protocols for Deathworld species. They were written thousands of years ago by species who feared what such worlds might produce. The protocols assume that any species surviving such conditions would be irredeemably hostile, dangerous beyond possibility of peaceful contact. I believed those protocols were wise. I believed they were based on sound reasoning and careful analysis. Now I am not so certain. Your species is everything the protocols warned about. You are strong and violent, and capable of terrible destruction. By every measure we use to assess threat, you should be our enemies. But you are also kind. You reached out to us in peace. You shared your knowledge freely. You treated us with respect and curiosity instead of fear and aggression. You are not what the protocols predicted. Samuel nodded slowly. Perhaps the protocols were based on incomplete data. Perhaps the species who wrote them never actually met anyone from a death world. They imagined what such beings might be like, and their imagination defaulted to monsters. Humans have done the same thing. For centuries we imagined alien life as hostile invaders coming to destroy us. We wrote stories about wars between worlds. We built weapons designed to fight threats from the sky. We assumed that anyone different from us must be dangerous. Meeting you has shown me how wrong those assumptions were. You are nothing like the aliens we imagined. You are gentle and curious and welcoming. You are everything we hoped to find and nothing we feared. Kethriel's skin glowed with warm golden light. Then perhaps we are both learning the same lesson, that intelligent beings cannot be judged by where they come from, only by what they choose to do. I think that is the most important lesson there is, Samuel agreed. The two scientists sat together in silence for a while. Around them, the neutral territory of the connecting tunnel hummed with the life support systems of both ships working to keep them alive. Outside the walls, the cold, dark universe stretched in all directions. Billions of stars, countless worlds, endless possibilities, and here in this small space between two vessels, representatives of two very different species had found common ground. Not despite their differences, but because they chose to look beyond those differences to what they shared. The desire to understand, the hope for connection, the belief that friendship was possible even between beings who should have been enemies. It was a small moment in the vast scale of the cosmos. But small moments had a way of changing everything. Kethriel stood. His tall, thin form towered over Samuel even with the reduced gravity. Dr. Okonquo, I would like to propose something. What do you have in mind? The gentle whisper carries records from the Galactic Concordat. History, science, culture, knowledge gathered over 12,000 years from 12 different species. I would like to share these records with your crew. All of them. As a gift from my people to yours. Samuel felt his breath catch in his throat. 12,000 years of knowledge. The accumulated wisdom of a dozen civilizations. It was an offering beyond price. And in return, Kethriel continued, I would ask you to share your records with us. Everything you know about Earth and humanity. Your history. Your science. Your art and culture and dreams. I want to understand your species. Not as a potential threat, but as potential friends. Samuel stood and extended his hand. It was a human gesture that he doubted Kethriel would understand. But the meaning was clear. Partnership, agreement, trust. Kethriel looked at the extended hand for a moment. Then slowly he reached out with his own long, delicate fingers and clasped Samuel's hand in what both species recognized as a grip of friendship. It seems, Kethriel said with a flicker of warm golden light, that children of paradise and children of death can learn from each other after all. I think, Samuel replied with a smile, that we have only just begun. The alarm woke Commander Elena Vasquez from a deep sleep. She was out of her bunk and on her feet before her eyes were fully open. Years of training had taught her to respond first and ask questions later. Report, she called out as she ran toward the bridge. Her voice carried through the ship's internal communication system. Lieutenant Chen's response came immediately. Commander, we have a major problem. The Valorians are reporting a Class 7 gravimetric disturbance in the outer system. Something is collapsing in subspace. Elena reached the bridge and threw herself into the command chair. The main display showed a section of space far from both ships. At first it looked normal. Then she noticed the distortion. A patch of stars that seemed to shimmer and twist in ways that violated everything she knew about physics. What are we looking at? A subspace fold is collapsing, said Science Officer Dr. Okonquo from his station. He had dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he had been awake for hours studying data from the Valorians. According to the Gentle Whisper's sensors, this kind of event releases massive amounts of radiation. We are talking about energy levels that would fry every unshielded system on both ships. How long until it reaches us? The Valorians estimate approximately 2 hours, maybe less. There is significant uncertainty in their calculations because they have never observed a collapse of this magnitude. 2 hours. Elena looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both ships. They were deep in the gravity well of the system. Getting out would require sustained acceleration at maximum engine power. Can we reach minimum safe distance in time? Lieutenant Commander Park ran the calculations. His expression told Elena the answer before he spoke. The Magellan can do it. We have the engine power. But Commander, the Gentle Whisper cannot. Explain. Valorian ships are designed for efficiency, not speed. Their engines are powerful enough for normal operations, but this situation requires emergency acceleration. According to their specifications, the Gentle Whisper can only manage 0.1 g continuous thrust. At that rate, they will still be in the radiation zone when the wavefront hits. Elena felt cold settle in her stomach. The Valorians were going to die. Unless something changed, they were going to be caught in a radiation storm that would kill every living thing on their ship. "Get me Kethriel," she ordered. The communication link opened within seconds. Kethriel's image appeared on the main display. His skin was flickering rapidly with colors Elena now recognized as extreme stress, gray and dark blue and purple all mixing together in chaotic patterns. "Commander Vasquez, I assume your sensors have detected the disturbance." "Yes." "Kethriel, I need to ask you directly. Can your ship escape in time?" The Valorian was silent for a moment. His lights flickered even faster. "No. We have calculated all possible options. Our engines cannot generate sufficient thrust to clear the danger zone before the wavefront arrives. The Gentle Whisper and its crew will not survive." Elena heard the despair in his translated words. He had already accepted that he was going to die, that his entire crew was going to die, and there was nothing he could do about it. "No," Elena said firmly. "That is not acceptable. Commander Vasquez, I appreciate your concern, but there is no alternative. Physics cannot be bargained with. Our engines are simply not capable of the required performance. Your engines are not, but ours are." Elena turned to Park. "Calculate a towing profile. The Magellan will drag the Gentle Whisper out of the danger zone." Park's eyes went wide. "Commander, that would require acceleration, stress that could damage both ships. The structural forces involved would be extreme." I said calculate it. "Now." Park bent over his console. His fingers flew across the controls as he ran simulation after simulation. The bridge was silent, except for the soft hum of equipment and the clicking of keys. Kethriel spoke through the communication link. His voice was hesitant. "Commander Vasquez, what are you proposing?" "We are going to attach towing cables to your ship and pull you to safety. Your crew will have to survive whatever acceleration we can manage, but you will survive. That is what matters. The structural stress on the Gentle Whisper would be significant. Our hull was not designed for such forces. Then we will reinforce it. We have engineers. We have materials. We will make it work. Commander." Kethriel's skin had shifted to a complex mix of colors. Surprise and hope and fear all blended together. "Your crew would be taking enormous risks. If something goes wrong during the tow, you could be trapped in the radiation zone as well. You could all die." Elena looked directly into the camera that was transmitting her image to the Valorian ship. "Kethriel, your people welcomed us. You shared your knowledge with us. You treated us as friends when you had every reason to fear us. We do not abandon our friends." "Park, what is the maximum safe acceleration for the Gentle Whisper?" "Based on their hull specifications, I would estimate 0.3 g. Any more than that, and we risk structural failure. 0.3 g for how long to reach minimum safe distance?" 6 hours, Commander. If we start immediately and maintain constant acceleration for 6 hours, both ships will clear the danger zone with approximately 7 minutes to spare. 6 hours at 0.3 g. For humans, that would be uncomfortable but manageable. Their bodies were designed to handle such forces. But for the Valorians who normally lived at 0.3 g, it would be grueling. Their bodies would be under constant stress. They might suffer injuries, but they would survive. Kethriel, can your crew survive 6 hours at 0.3 g acceleration? The Valorian commander consulted with someone off-screen. When he turned back, his skin showed grim determination. "It will be painful. Some of my crew may suffer injuries, but we believe it is survivable." "Yes, then we do it. All hands, this is Commander Vasquez. We are initiating emergency towing procedures. I want engineering teams suited up and ready to move in 10 minutes. We are going to pull the Gentle Whisper out of the fire." The next hour was controlled chaos. Human crew members swarmed over both ships, working at furious speed to prepare for the tow. Engineer Maria Santos led a team onto the hull of the Magellan to attach heavy-duty towing cables. The cables were meant for salvage operations. They had never been tested at the forces they were about to experience. Meanwhile, other teams moved onto the Gentle Whisper to reinforce critical structural points. They worked alongside Valorian engineers who provided guidance on where their ship was strongest and weakest. The translation systems were pushed to their limits as technical jargon flew back and forth between the two crews. Elena watched the operation from the bridge of the Magellan. She had never felt more proud of her crew. They moved with purpose and efficiency despite the danger. Every person knew what was at stake. Every person was giving everything they had. "Commander," said Lieutenant Chen. "Engineering reports towing cables are secure. The Gentle Whisper confirms structural reinforcement is complete. Time until the wave front, 1 hour, 12 minutes. Elena took a deep breath. "All hands secure for acceleration. Valorian vessel prepare for tow. We begin in 5 minutes." The minutes crawled by. Elena used the time to make final checks on every system. The engines, the cables, the life support. Everything had to work perfectly for the next 6 hours or everyone died. 30 seconds, Chen announced. Elena opened a channel to the Gentle Whisper. "Kethriel, we are about to begin. Tell your crew to hold on, Commander Vasquez. Whatever happens, I want you to know that your actions today honor everything your species could be. Thank you. Save the thanks for when we make it. Beginning acceleration now." The Magellan's engines roared to life. Elena felt herself pressed back into her chair as the ship surged forward. The artificial gravity compensated for most of the force, but she could still feel the acceleration in her bones, a constant pressure pushing her toward the rear of the ship. On the display, she watched the towing cables go taut. For a horrible moment, she thought they might snap. The strain was immense. Metal groaned and creaked as forces designed for one ship were distributed across two. But the cables held. The Gentle Whisper began to move. Slowly at first, then faster as the Magellan's powerful engines found their rhythm. Both ships accelerated together away from the coming storm. "Tow is successful," Chen reported. His voice was tight with tension. "Both ships accelerating at 0.31 G. Structural readings are within acceptable limits. How is the Gentle Whisper holding up?" "Minor stress fractures in 3 secondary bulkheads. Nothing critical. Their crew is reporting extreme discomfort but no serious injury so far." So far. 6 hours was a long time. Anything could go wrong. The first hour passed slowly. Elena divided her attention between monitoring the ships and tracking the approaching wavefront. The subspace collapse was expanding faster than the initial estimates. Their 7-minute margin was shrinking. "Engineering," Elena called. "Can we increase acceleration at all?" Maria Santos responded from somewhere deep in the Magellan's engine room. "We can push to 0.35 if we have to. But Commander, I am already asking a lot from these engines. If we push harder, we risk a failure that would strand us both." "Understood. Hold at current thrust." Hour 2. The stress was beginning to show on both crews. The humans were tired and anxious. The Valorians were suffering under the constant weight of acceleration. Reports came in of Valorian crew members collapsing at their stations. Medical teams on both ships worked to treat injuries as they occurred. Hour 3. A towing cable showed signs of metal fatigue. Santos took a team outside in emergency suits to reinforce the connection. They worked in the harsh light of the system's star with radiation alarms constantly beeping warnings. The cosmic rays passing through their suits were approaching dangerous levels, but they kept working. "Santos report," Elena called. "Cable reinforced, Commander. It will hold. Just make sure we do not hit any bumps on the way." There were no bumps in space, but Elena appreciated the humor. Santos and her team were risking their lives to save people they had only met a few days ago. That was the kind of crew she had. Hour 4. The wavefront was clearly visible now on the sensors, a wall of radiation expanding outward from the collapsed subspace fold. It looked almost beautiful in its way, swirling patterns of energy that would have been fascinating to study if they were not deadly. "Time to wavefront arrival at our projected position," Elena asked. 14 minutes, Chen replied. We will clear the danger zone with approximately 5 minutes to spare at current acceleration. 5 minutes. Better than nothing, but not much margin for error. Hour 5. Something broke on the gentle whisper. A secondary power conduit that fed their life support system. The backup systems activated, but they were designed for Valorian normal conditions. At point 3G they were struggling. Kethril, what is your situation? We are managing, Commander. Some compartments are losing atmosphere, but we have sealed them. My crew is strong. We will endure. Elena heard the pain in his voice even through the translation. He was suffering. His whole crew was suffering. But they kept going because the alternative was death. Hour 5.5. Another problem. One of the Magellan's engine cooling systems was failing. The sustained high output was generating more heat than the system could handle. If the engines overheated, they would shut down automatically, and both ships would coast to a stop still inside the danger zone. Engineering options, Elena demanded. Santos responded immediately. I can bypass the failing cooler and redirect flow through the secondary system. It will work, but I have to do it manually. The repair will take about 20 minutes. We do not have 20 minutes. I know, Commander. I am going to work fast. Elena watched the sensor displays as Santos disappeared into the depths of the engine room. The wavefront was expanding. The ships were accelerating. The clock was counting down. Everything hung in balance. 15 minutes later, Santos called in. Bypass complete. Cooling restored. Engines are running clean. Elena released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Outstanding work, Santos. Drinks are on me when we get home. I am going to hold you to that, Commander. The final 30 minutes were the longest of Elena's life. She watched the distance counter slowly increase as both ships raced ahead of the approaching wavefront. She watched the structural monitors for any sign of failure. She listened to reports from both crews documenting the small crises and close calls that kept threatening to derail everything. And then finally it was over. Wavefront passing behind us, Chen announced. His voice cracked with relief. We are clear. Both ships are outside the danger zone. The bridge erupted in cheers. Elena slumped back in her chair and let the tension drain from her body. They had done it. Against all odds and all expectations, they had pulled the gentle whisper to safety. All ships reduce acceleration to 0.1 G, Elena ordered. Begin damage assessment. And get me Kethril. The Valorian commander's image appeared on the display a moment later. He looked exhausted. His skin was pale and his lights were dim and flickering. But he was alive. His whole crew was alive. Commander Vasquez, Kethril said. His voice was barely above a whisper. You saved us. You risked everything to save us. That is what friends do, Kethril. How is your crew? Injured. Exhausted. Several will need medical attention when we reach a proper facility. But everyone survived. 112 souls who would be dead right now if not for you. Elena nodded. We have medical supplies and personnel who can help. We will do whatever we can. Why? Kethril asked suddenly. His lights flickered with something Elena could not identify. Why did you do this? We are strangers to you. We are not even the same species. You could have saved yourselves and left us to die. No one would have blamed you. It was a fair question. Elena thought about how to answer it. Kethril. When I was young, I learned a story about my species. It was about a time long ago when two groups of humans were at war. One group captured soldiers from the other group and held them prisoner. The prisoners were cold and hungry and sick. They were enemies. They should have been left to suffer. But one woman in the capturing group looked at those prisoners and saw not enemies but human beings. She gave them blankets and food and medicine. She treated their wounds even though they had been trying to kill her people just days before. When asked why she did this, she said something I have never forgotten. She said that kindness is not a reward for good behavior. It is a choice we make about who we want to be. We can choose to be cruel when cruelty is justified, or we can choose to be kind even when kindness is difficult. The choice defines us. Today, my crew and I chose kindness. We chose to help strangers who needed help. Not because we expected anything in return, not because it was safe or easy, but because it was the right thing to do. Kethril was silent for a long moment. His skin slowly began to glow with warm golden light. The brightest, warmest light Elena had ever seen from him. Commander Vasquez, when I first saw your ship, I was afraid. I thought you were monsters from a nightmare world. I thought you would bring violence and destruction wherever you went. I was wrong. Your species evolved on a death world. You developed the strength and endurance to survive conditions that would kill any other intelligent being. But you also developed something else, something I do not have a name for, a capacity for compassion that defies explanation. You are terrifying, Elena Vasquez. You and your crew. You are the most dangerous beings I have ever met. But you are also the kindest, and that combination is something the galaxy has never seen before. Elena smiled. It was a tired smile, an exhausted smile, but it was genuine. We are just trying to be better than we used to be. That is all anyone can do. I think, Kethril said slowly, that you are succeeding. The two ships drifted together in the quiet dark of space. Behind them, the radiation storm raged on, consuming everything it touched. But they were safe. They had outrun the fire. They had survived together, and in surviving together they had forged something new. A bond between two species that should never have met. A friendship that would change the course of history. Neither commander knew it yet. But the events of this day would echo through the galaxy for thousands of years. The day the humans came. The day everything changed. For now, though, they were just tired. They were just grateful to be alive. And that was enough. The great council chamber of the Galactic Concordat had stood for more than 11,000 years. Its walls were carved from stone quarried on 12 different worlds. Its ceiling arched overhead in a dome that displayed real-time images of the galaxy itself. Stars by the billions glowed above the gathered representatives like the eyes of ancestors watching from eternity. Senior Surveyor Kethril had never stood before the council before. In 300 years of service, he had submitted countless reports through official channels. He had received commendations and promotions, but he had never been summoned to appear in person. The council only summoned surveyors when something truly extraordinary had occurred. Today was such a day. He stood at the center of the chamber on a raised platform that allowed all representatives to see him clearly. Around him, in concentric rings, sat the leaders of 12 spacefaring civilizations. Valorians like himself with their soft, glowing skin, Thessians with their round organic bodies covered in sensory cilia, Kethvari whose long needle-shaped forms seemed to defy gravity, and 9 other species, each unique, each ancient, each powerful in their own way. High Counselor Vethmar presided over the assembly. She was old even by Valorian standards. Her light had faded to a dim pale blue that spoke of wisdom earned through countless centuries of service. Her voice when she spoke filled the chamber without amplification. Senior Surveyor Kethril, you have submitted a report that has caused considerable concern among the Council. A report claiming first contact with a species from a Class 3 death world. Is this report accurate? It is, High Counselor. A murmur ran through the chamber. Representatives leaned toward each other to exchange quiet words. Skin flickered with colors of surprise and unease. Describe this species, Vethmar commanded. Kethril had prepared for this moment. He had spent the entire journey back to Concordat space, organizing his thoughts, reviewing his recordings, choosing his words with care. They call themselves humans. They originate from a planet called Earth, which orbits a yellow star in an uncharted region of the outer rim. Earth meets all criteria for Class 3 Death World classification. Extreme gravity at 1.0 G. Toxic oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Geological and meteorological instability. Ecosystem dominated by predatory and parasitic life forms. The humans have evolved biological adaptations that allow them to survive these conditions. Reinforced skeletal structure capable of self-repair. Redundant organ systems. Highly developed immune response to combat constant microbial threats. Cardiovascular system powered by a single tireless muscle that beats without rest for their entire lives. They possess a neurological stress response that enhances their physical capabilities when threatened. Under duress, they become stronger, faster, more resistant to pain. They are persistence predators who evolve to run prey to exhaustion over long distances. Another murmur, this one louder, more disturbed. And their disposition? Vethmar asked. Are they hostile as the protocols predict? This was the critical question. Kethril knew that his answer would determine how the Concordat responded to humanity. He chose his words with extreme care. No, High Counselor. They are not hostile. When we first made contact, Commander Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Magellan greeted us with words of peace and friendship. She expressed genuine joy at meeting another intelligent species. She shared information about her people freely and honestly. I spent many cycles aboard the human vessel learning about their culture and history. Yes, they are capable of violence. Their history contains many wars and conflicts, but they are also capable of remarkable compassion. They have developed complex systems of ethics and morality. They debate among themselves about the right way to treat others. They strive to be better than their instincts would make them. And then there is what they did for us. Kethriel paused. The chamber was completely silent. Every representative was watching him with total attention. During our contact, a Class 7 gravimetric disturbance occurred in the system. The resulting radiation wavefront would have destroyed the gentle whisper. Our engines could not generate sufficient thrust to escape in time. By all measures, we should have died. Commander Vasquez refused to accept this. She ordered her crew to attach towing cables to our vessel and drag us to safety. The operation required 6 hours of sustained acceleration at forces that caused injuries to my crew. The humans risked their own lives and their own ship to save us. When I asked Commander Vasquez why she had done this, she told me a story. A story about choosing kindness even when cruelty would be easier. A story about defining oneself through compassion rather than strength. She said that helping strangers in need was simply the right thing to do. Kethriel let that sink in. He could see the representatives processing his words, struggling to reconcile what they were hearing with everything they had believed about Deathworld species. High Counselor, Council members, I have served the Concordat for 300 years. I have encountered many species in that time. Some were friendly, some were hostile, some were indifferent, but I have never met anyone like the humans. They are terrifying. There is no other word for it. Their biology is designed for violence and survival in conditions that would kill any of us. They have the capacity to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but they choose not to be. They look at their violent past and they work to build a peaceful future. They see strangers in need and they risk everything to help. They have every reason to be monsters, and yet they strive to be good. The protocols we have for Deathworld species assume that such beings would be irredeemably hostile. I believe those protocols are wrong. I believe the humans prove that evolution does not determine destiny, that even children of nightmare worlds can choose to be kind. Kethriel bowed his head. I recommend that the Galactic Concordat establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. I recommend that we share our knowledge and technology with them as allies rather than isolate them as threats. They are young and they are dangerous, but they are also our future. The chamber exploded into debate. Representatives from all 12 species spoke over each other in a cacophony of languages and translation systems. Some argued for caution, some argued for engagement, some argued for immediate defensive measures just in case. High Counselor Vethmar let the debate continue for several minutes. Then she raised her hand and silence fell. Senior Surveyor Kethriel, you have given us much to consider. The Council will deliberate and render a decision in due time. For now, I have one final question. Yes, High Counselor. You said the humans reached interstellar travel within 80 years of leaving their planet's atmosphere. Is this correct? It is, High Counselor. Vethmar's ancient eyes studied Kethriel with an intensity that made him want to look away. And how long would you estimate before they develop technology comparable to our own? It was a question Kethriel had asked himself many times during the journey home. The answer frightened him. Based on their rate of progress and their apparent drive to improve, I would estimate 100 to 200 years, perhaps less if they gain access to Concordat knowledge. The silence that followed was deafening. 100 years. A blink of an eye by Concordat standards. The humans would go from first contact to technological parity within a single Valorian lifetime. Then it seems, Vethmar said slowly, that we do not have the luxury of deliberating for centuries as we usually do. The humans are coming whether we are ready or not. The only question is whether they come as friends or as something else. She turned to address the full council. Representatives, I move that we establish immediate contact with the human government. We will offer them provisional membership in the Concordat with full membership pending demonstration of peaceful intent. We will share knowledge on a limited basis at first, expanding as trust develops. We cannot treat them as we have treated Deathworld species in the past. They are not mindless monsters to be contained. They are a young civilization with extraordinary potential. Our choice now is whether to guide that potential or to fear it. I choose guidance. I choose hope. I choose to believe that the universe is large enough for all of us. The vote was not unanimous. Some species abstained. A few voted against. But the majority supported Vethmar's motion. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Concordat opened its doors to a species from a death world. The news spread across the galaxy in days. A new species, humans, from a world called Earth, strong and dangerous and strange, but also curious and compassionate, and eager to make friends. Some species were afraid. They saw the humans as a threat that would eventually consume everything. They argued for preemptive action before the humans grew too powerful to stop. Others were fascinated. They wanted to meet these impossible beings who breathed poison and walked in crushing gravity. They wanted to learn from a species that had done in 80 years what took others thousands. And some were simply curious. What would happen when children of paradise met children of nightmare? What would the galaxy look like when humans took their place among the stars? Nobody knew. The future was unwritten. But for the first time in a very long time, that future felt exciting rather than predictable. Far away across the vast empty spaces between stars, the Magellan continued its journey. Commander Elena Vasquez sat in her quarters reviewing the star charts that Kethriel had provided before they parted ways. Thousands of systems were marked. Hundreds of species. More wonder and mystery than a single lifetime could explore. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Enter. Dr. Samuel Okonquo stepped inside. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Commander, we have received a transmission from the Valorian relay station. It is from Kethriel. What does it say? The Galactic Concordat has voted to establish formal relations with humanity. They want to send an embassy to Earth. They want to welcome us into their alliance. Elena set down the star charts. She had hoped for this outcome but had not dared to expect it. The universe had just opened up in ways she could barely comprehend. What else? Kethriel included a personal message. He says that the council debated for many hours. There was strong opposition. Many species feared what humans might become. But in the end, they chose hope over fear. They chose to give us a chance. He says that we should expect visitors soon. Representatives from multiple species who want to meet us. He says we should prepare ourselves because the galaxy is about to become very interested in humanity. Elena laughed. She could not help it. A month ago she had been sailing through empty space hoping to find a single alien microbe. Now she was an ambassador for her entire species standing at the threshold of a galactic civilization. Tell Kethriel thank you. Tell him we look forward to welcoming his people and all peoples who come in peace. Tell him that humanity is ready to take its place among the stars. She stood and walked to the observation window. Outside, the stars burned with ancient light. Each one was a sun. Many had planets. Some of those planets had life. And now humanity knew they were not alone. Samuel, before you go, I want to send a message to Earth. Yes, Commander. First contact successful. We have made friends. They think we are terrifying, but they are willing to give us a chance. The galaxy is vast and old and filled with wonders we cannot imagine, and we are no longer alone. She paused, thinking about everything that had happened. Everything that was about to happen. Tell them that the universe has been waiting for us. Tell them that we have a lot of catching up to do. Tell them that humanity's greatest adventure is just beginning. Okonquo nodded and left to send the message. Elena remained at the window watching the stars. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their lives unaware of how everything was about to change, about the children being born right now who would grow up in a galaxy full of wonders. She thought about her crew, about the courage they had shown, about the kindness they had demonstrated when they saved the gentle whisper. They had proven something important, something the galaxy needed to see. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just dangerous predators from a nightmare world. They were also protectors, helpers, friends. That was the message they had sent to the universe. Not with words, but with actions. We are strong. We are capable of great violence. But we choose to be kind. We choose to reach out rather than strike. We choose to build bridges rather than burn them. It was a message that would echo through history. The day humanity met the stars and proved that children of Deathworlds could still choose light over darkness. Elena smiled. It was a good message, a true message. And now the whole galaxy was listening. She turned back to her charts and began planning the route to the nearest Concordat outpost. There were introductions to make, friendships to build, a universe to explore. The Magellan's engines hummed with power. The stars called out in their eternal voices. And humanity answered. They had always answered. Through ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. Through every hardship their world had thrown at them. They had survived. They had adapted. They had grown. And now they were going to do the same thing on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Not through conquest or domination, but through courage and compassion, and an unquenchable desire to see what lay beyond the next horizon. The humans were coming. The universe would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be. Elena entered the new heading into the navigation computer and authorized the course change. The Magellan turned gracefully toward distant stars, toward new friends and new challenges and new opportunities. "Attention all hands," Elena announced over the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Vasquez. Set course for Concordat space. We have been invited to join a galactic community. Let's not keep them waiting." The crew responded with cheers that echoed through the corridors. They had come so far. They had proven so much. And the journey was only beginning. Elena sat back in her command chair and watched the stars streak past as the ship accelerated. Somewhere out there among those countless points of light, beings from a dozen worlds were preparing to meet humanity, some with fear, some with hope, all with curiosity about these impossible creatures from a death world who had reached for the stars and refused to let go. She hoped they would not be disappointed. She believed they would not be. Because whatever else humans might be, they were always reaching, always growing, always becoming something more than they were before. That was the gift of Earth. The gift of surviving a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned that standing still meant death, that the only way to live was to keep moving forward, and now they would carry that lesson to the stars. They would share it with every species they met. They would prove that evolution was not destiny, that the circumstances of one's birth did not determine the content of one's character. The humans were coming. With open hands and open hearts, ready to make friends, ready to learn, ready to help, ready to show the universe what children of a death world could become when they chose hope over fear. The Magellan flew on into the endless dark. Behind it, a message traveled at the speed of light toward distant Earth. A message of hope. A message of possibility. A message that everything was about to change. And among the stars where the gentle whisper made its way home, Senior Surveyor Kethria looked out at the void and smiled in his own way. He had met monsters. He had found friends. He had learned that the universe was stranger and more wonderful than he had ever imagined. That was the gift the humans had given him. The gift of possibility. The gift of hope. He hoped the galaxy was ready for them. But even if it was not, he knew they would adapt. They always did. That was what Deathworld species did. They survived. They grew. They reached for the stars, and they never ever gave up.